Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and joining me as he does every single Sunday night, MB Fantasy Life's finest, a true friend and a great guy overall, Dwain McFarland. What's up, man?
Great guy overall. He has some flaws, but man, I'm good. How about you?
Just telling you before, I'm coming to you all live from a random Chicago Airbnb. It's been a wedding weekend. Love my friends, even when they have to do a freaking fall Saturday wedding, Dwayne, but we persevered, still have red zone in the lovely city of Chicago. So was able to still catch most of the action today, even if I wasn't able to, completely hijack my friends and families to watch, a bunch of grown men play football like I do more times than not. So with all that in mind, Dwayne and I, as always, can go through each and every game from Sunday using everything we saw, some of the cool shit on the back end of PFF that helps us hopefully predict the future in a good way. And with that, we will get going with probably the most shocking result of the day. Panthers 21, Buccaneers 3, covering as a 13.5 point dog. The under cashed at 39. So before, we'll get to all the Tampa Bay problems in a second, Dwayne, but I like to start off with the winners, especially when our guy Tommy Trembles himself finds the end zone. That was a fun.
Yo, Tommy Trembles.
Tommy Trembles over here, just finding the end zone. But Tommy Tremble's touchdown was fun. But obviously, the really big, important fantasy note was this backfield, with all due respect to DJ Moore having a nice amount of yards and a touchdown. So with this backfield, we did have D'Onta Foreman end up with the lead, 15 carries, 2 targets, and 54% snaps. That was mostly, though, Dwayne, because of Chuba suffering that ankle injury. So if you look at just the first 3 quarters of that game before the ankle, Hubbard had 22 snaps, 14 for Foreman. Adam Schefter's come out and said it's a minor sprain of the ankle, but quote unquote, he could have come back in if needed. Hilariousness aside, that the Panthers didn't even need Chuba Hubbard to come back into a game against the Buccaneers. Was there anything about that usage, Dwayne, that made you really feeling better about them moving forward? Because I think it was a good performance from this group, but we've still seen 6 weeks out of this season that tell us this is a very bad offense. I would think that will be the case more weeks than not moving forward.
Yeah, I'm still scared to death of this backfield. What we know is that it's a split. Now, we did see Chuba Hubbard quite a bit more. So if we look at, he got hurt like the first or second snap of the fourth quarter. And so before that, he had handled 55% of the snaps, 67% of the rushing attempts. D'Onta Foreman had 35% of the snaps, 33% of the rushing attempts. Foreman did handle the 2-minute offense. Oddly enough, that's the thing that we thought belonged to Chuba Hubbard. So in bizarro world, where we just really don't know jack shit, it was actually D'Onta Foreman with the passing down snaps. They did split the long down and distance work, and they split the short yardage work evenly. Now, some of that could have just came down to the way the drives divided out, right? If you happen to be out there on the drive that you had and the short down and distance came up. Can't always be sure. I haven't had a chance to dig into that exactly, but it did look like Chuba was in the lead. Now, both backs looked good today. Both of them were over 4 yards after contact. Both of them were over 10% in explosive rush rate. So those are carries of 10+ yards, 13% for D'Onta Foreman, 22% for Chuba Hubbard. But man, it's still hard. I don't know. Would I be surprised if it totally flip-flopped next week, even if Hubbard is, healthy and it's Foreman? I don't know that we can trust it. And then to your point, it's just not a good offense. It's still probably going to be trailing for the majority of plays. Today, they only had to drop back to pass 48% of the time. They ran the ball 52% of plays today because they were ahead pretty much the whole game on the Bucs. And so you had a perfect game script that worked out. It was just wild. Would we have ever expected this team, number one, not, beating the Bucs, is a huge thing, but being in a position where they would actually come out and run the ball on this defense, 118 yards for Foreman, 63 yards for Chuba Hubbard. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're going to go Arthur Smith. We're going to refuse to pass. We're just going to run the ball every play.
Anything's possible when you got XFL Hall of Famer PJ Walker under center, Dwayne. Just a great day for the XFL there. So again, awesome performance from the Panthers. Looks like they made it out of the game pretty injury free. Again, other than that Hubbard ankle injury, but that's not supposed to be too serious. DJ Moore did get banged up when he ran into the freaking wall after scoring his touchdown, but it did seem like he came back in the game and all was fine. So yeah, move those freaking walls back. We don't always have to tunnel for Bo Jackson to go running down. On the other side of things, Dwayne, it's another week.
It was a big time funnel to DJ today. 10 targets, 7 receptions. He had 48% of the target share. And honestly, that's the way it should be. In this offense right now, with CMC gone, Robbie Anderson gone, we thought it might be more condensed, and it definitely was. So if they can find ways to scheme it to him, maybe this at least makes more serviceable. I don't know what your thoughts are. I'm still hesitant to move him out of anything more than like a mid-range, low-end wide receiver 3.
Yeah, because the other problem is what you were saying about them wanting to run the ball more. Like, I don't think it's going to be a situation where we're going to see them asking PJ Walker, Baker, or Darnold to throw the ball 40 times. So, yeah, it was great that he made more out of it this week because he finally did it for the first time all season. 10 targets overall last 3 weeks. He had 7, 8, 11. So, earlier on in the year, the volume really was the issue. Again, I just think it's the whole offensive environment. At least we do know that it is possible still in the year 2022 for DJ Moore to flirt with a boom. But I mean, come on, we're not going to have him as like a wide receiver 2 now. He's still going to be someone that, very, very much so does not need to be started each and every week, obviously depending on the roster. So on the Buccaneers side of things,
Well, hang on. If you play in a 32-team fantasy league, you can pick up Terrace Marshall. Otherwise, don't worry about it. He did get 96% of the routes today, and he is a former second-round pick. So I only throw it out there because, he was a high draft pick last year. There were some things we liked. It didn't work out. So if you're playing a super deep league and, it's like what John Hansen calls on Sirius XM, he says a skank league. Like if you're in a skank league and there's nothing on the wire, Ian, we're in some of these together. We're in some skank leagues where there's nothing on the wire. Terrace Marshall, you can probably get him on a min bid and just see what happens, if anything. For God's sake, don't start him though.
Dwayne's trying to get this podcast to go 3 hours, cutting me off. So
I'm sorry. I just had to say one nice thing about, another Panthers player. They're the winners. We have to give them some positivity. All right, go ahead, Ian.
But with that positivity, I will note that Marshall did drop what would have been a nice little 30-yard chunk gain out there. So
never mind. Don't pick him up.
With that said, though, let's go back and take a look at, your 3-4 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Fun little stat from Rap Sheet and NFL Research. Tom Brady has a losing record through his first 7 games of the season for the first time since 2002. This Buccaneers offense, they've only scored more than 21 points one time, and that was in that, beat down against Kansas City where they were just kind of in comeback mode the whole game. Buccaneers games without more than 21 points. They only had 2 in 2020, only 3 last year. Already this year, they have 6. Dwayne, I saw you tweeting through some issues, trying to figure out what the hell is going on here. And you had an interesting take that a lot of people seem to be pointing towards the pressure that's been in Tom Brady's face as the cause of this. Maybe not. And, there's a lot of nuances and context that goes into any single stat, obviously. Yeah. But hey, so far, at least this year, according to last year, as you said on Twitter, not actually that big of a difference in terms of how often Brady's been pressured.
Yeah, over the last 2 years, 22% of the time he's dropped back, he's been under pressure. This year, only 20%. His average time to throw is down a little bit this year, 2.25 versus, last year was like over 2.35. And then if you look at, just his average time to pressure, it's really the same as well. So he's not being pressured any faster. He's not being pressured anymore. What I couldn't figure out how to get to, I used to know how to do this in the back end tool in PFF, or whatever reason I couldn't figure it out before the show. I wanted to see how much interior pressure, right? Because we know they've got all these interior offensive linemen hurt. Matt Waldman, I thought, made a really good point. When I threw that question out there, he's like, not all pressures, created equal. Pressure up the middle could be much more problematic for Brady. So maybe that's what's going on. But his completion percentages, his adjusted completion percentage, all that stuff's the same. ADOT's down slightly. It's just the touchdowns aren't there, Ian. It's overall, I feel like the offense is still kind of on the verge, but for whatever reason, and maybe it's to do with Chris Godwin still getting better. They've kind of had Cam Brate in and out of the offense. They've had, Russell Gage really hasn't clicked yet. Julio hasn't been in there. Mike Evans, was dinged up today, so even though he stayed out there and he played, I think he left the lineup like twice where he had to go over to the sideline with different injuries. So I don't know. Maybe it's an injury thing with the receivers, but they're still throwing the ball plenty. 12 targets today to Godwin and 13 to Mike Evans.
That will work. We'll take that volume 8 days a week. And obviously, Tom Brady, as you guys all saw, certainly should have had a nice faster start to this one when he hit Mike Evans for what should have been a walk-in 70-yard touchdown after the corner fell down. Unfortunately, Evans went ahead, sheesh that, straight up dropped it. There was another play where Evans had his hands on a pass that would have been good for another 25 or 30 yards, not a touchdown or anything, but weird one of those things, man, where you look at the Evans box score, 9 catches, 96 yards. If you didn't watch the game, you're just like, oh, great job, Mike Evans. Really did leave a lot of meat on that bone. Chris Godwin also had a long ball go just off his fingertips. Would have been an incredible diving catch, but the offense is close. I am going to be one of a million people, this week to say I would not overly panic. We are still getting all sorts of pass game volume, and you just got to think they are going to figure it out at some point. A couple more injuries, though. Evans did get banged up on a weird incompletion later in the game where he had to kind of sit down. I believe he came back in after. He did
come back in, but yeah.
He's a king of that, man. Like him, Julio, Tyreek a little bit. Like you just
Amari
always see
Cooper does it.
Oh my gosh, just hobbling off the field. Luckily, coming back on later. As soon as you're like, wait, what happened with Mike Evans? Like, oh, there he is making another catch out there. And also, Russell Gage unfortunately did re-injure that hamstring. So that's been the unfortunate part, Dwayne, with this whole offense. Like I think they were expecting Gage to not be Antonio Brown, but be someone that they could go to in moments, and he could win one-on-one in coverage. And Gage just really the whole year he's been questionable almost every single week with this hamstring injury. He's playing through the pain, but just has not really looked like that really promising player that we saw for most of last season in Atlanta. So hopefully they can figure it out. Julio Jones seems to be a little bit closer to getting back. Obviously can't exactly, trust that it's going to be too long of a stretch once he is, but a man can dream. Bengals took down the Falcons 35-17, covering as 6.5-point favorites. Game total cashed the over at 47.5. Just another absolutely bonkers game from Joe Burrow. And he's starting to rack him up here, Dwayne. We were a little bit worried to start the year. All of a sudden, back-to-back overall QB1 finishes. Now, he did this last season at the very end. Like, he actually really boomed a lot of his fantasy numbers with back-to-back overall QB1 finishes. Now he's doing it in week 6 and 7. So if this is beginning of even bigger things to come, oh my goodness. But yes, 345 passing yards at halftime. Tyler Boyd, 155 yards in the tutty. Jamar Chase had 2 touchdowns, 130 yards. Honestly, like we finally saw that deep ball get a nice connection there. And then when AJ Terrell missed time with a hamstring, it just didn't really look like anyone on the field could go out there and guard Jamar Chase one-on-one. Higgins had a good game, 93 yards. He could have had a touchdown, got just short, tried to reach over the goal line for his fantasy managers, not quite there. And also Tyler Boyd almost had a second touchdown once again, out of bounds, just short. So, hey, I don't have a big question here, Dwayne, because everything looks fantastic with the Bengals. We got 3 really good wide receivers, and I think if you had to go across the league, receiver 1, 2, and 3, okay, I get the arguments if you want to say Tyreek, Waddle, and you, Dwayne, versus whoever in the league. But, from top to bottom, you can argue that these are the league's, single best trio of wide receivers. Joe Mixon going out there, not being the most efficient guy, but still scoring a touchdown. And he has looked better, at least in recent weeks compared to the start of the year. If we start seeing this Bengals offense is now playing like what we thought they were going to play like all season long. And that is really good for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway here, we don't need to talk about any players. Like, it's a pretty condensed offense. We know who the players are. 69% of the plays today they dropped back to pass. They were leading after their first drive. Like, they led the whole game. So they went down and scored 7 points. They never trailed. It was never close. It was never within 3 after that. So for them to still drop back and throw the ball 69, or at least drop back, you could get sacked, right? Or you could scramble, but drop back rate still at 69%. That is huge, because typically, like an NFL team, when leading by just 3 points or more, they drop back to pass 50%. And so the Bengals were 19 percentage points above that today, and they were leading by way freaking more than that. So it's like they put the pedal to the metal, which is really what we've wanted to see. We saw that in Joe Burrow's rookie season. It went away last year. We got it down the stretch. It's kind of what they were doing, in the playoff run. They slowed it down a little bit in the Super Bowl early in this season. It wasn't quite there, but here for these last couple of games, we've seen it back again. So I think that's the big takeaway. This offense is going to be willing to throw. It moves everyone up. And like, look, you're already going to have Jamar Chase. You're going to have T. Higgins, at the top of your ranks anyway. But it helps the guys like Tyler Boyd, Ian. If they're going to drop back and throw the ball this much, Tyler Boyd now becomes viable again. He had fallen into that wide receiver 4 territory. This could bring him back up into that wide receiver 3 range now.
It was kind of funny on the Boyd 60-yard touchdown, wide open downfield. And I saw Robert Meza tweet out the replay, and the safety legit just, turf monster just fell down. Wasn't a special route. Wasn't this great play design. Just, hey, sometimes the guy falls down.
That's one of those. Yeah. It's one of those few that we look at the charting stuff that you and I get to go see. And every once in a while you'll find that rare wide open, and it's usually somebody fell down.
Almost every single time. Again, we know we have now in Cincy, and it's great to see Zach Taylor actually, playing to his strengths. What an incredible novel idea that is. Now, on the other side of the ball, I don't think Dwayne's going to be happy.
Hey, real quick, just where are you putting Joe Burrow now? Like, rest of the season? Like he's got to be in the top 5, 6 now, right? Like doing this every week. It's just God. Like I don't know how to not. I mean, we've called him a mid-range QB1 all along, so it's not like we've been low on the dude, right? But I mean, at this point, I'm kind of like, okay, like I mean,
him versus Kyler.
I think you got to go him over Kyler at this point. You
Probably.
know, I mean, yeah. I mean, look, we still like Kyler. We know the rushing is going to be there, but Burrow's scoring the touchdowns, man. He's got the weapons to do it.
Great point by Dane Dash. It is too bad Auden Tate isn't there anymore. Then we could be talking about the best quartet in the NFL. Maybe one day. He's still a free agent, since you guys could
Dame
use
Dash.
A little bit.
He really wants us to go 3 hours. You get Ian going on Auden Tate.
Already talking about Auden Tate 15 minutes in. Great day to be great. On the Falcons side of things, yeah, it's kind of weird when you lose a game by 18. Your starting quarterback has a whopping 13 pass attempts on the day. And man, we've seen Mariota do it okay this year. Like London had the 3 top 36 finishes to start the year. Kyle Pitts is Kyle Pitts. We all understand that at this point, but the man had 1,000 yards last year. He can't be that freaking bad at football. They just are refusing to go to the air. The one touchdown they did get was Demir Bird, who's, on his quest to play for all 32 NFL teams by the end of his career, 75 yards deep down the middle, when the Bengals just really thought, I think he was running more of a clear out route. But yeah, man, the biggest, sheesh situation of the game was easily Kyle Pitts actually getting a nice design goal line play. Defensive end realized he was matched up with Kyle Pitts and just tackled him. So they went back to him. And then basically the same thing that happened to Darnell Mooney in that Bears-Washington game a couple of weeks ago happened, where he had the touchdown, past the line, but then he slightly bobbled it. So by the time he regained possession, he was about an inch short of the end zone. But here we are, Dwayne, through 7 weeks, and in non-garbage time situations, the Falcons have a 46.4% pass play rate. They are the only team in the NFL running the ball on over half of their plays. I mean, look, the Bears and Titans are next closest. We all know those are extremely run-first offenses. They're at least at a 51% pass play rate. So I don't want to go too crazy, because let's face it, going into this game, this was a top 10 offense in pretty much everything. So as annoying as it is for our fantasy aspirations, we do need to give Arthur Smith a little bit of credit for weeks 1 through 6, fielding a good offense. With that said, it was weeks 1 through 6. Now, if I had to guess what weeks, 7 through 18 are going to look like, Dwayne, I do think more likely chance of being bottom 10 than top 10.
Yeah, and they had a lot of stuff break their way early in the season, like turnovers, field position, a lot of things went the Falcons' way. When they don't get the ball to bounce their way and they have to play from behind like this, like Arthur Smith, look, dude, I get it. You don't trust Marcus Mariota, but like he's going to give you a better shot to come back and win the game than running Tyler Algier and Caleb Huntley freaking 50 times. Like, what the hell? They were down. So this game, they trailed 100% of their snaps by 7 points or more. They dropped back to pass 45% of the time. Of course, multiple of those turned into scrambles from Mariota, which is how you still just end up with 13 pass attempts. The NFL average this season, 2022, the year 2022 after our Lord, like 72%. Like, so I don't know, man. Like, that's just too much. It's too freaking much. Like, when you have London, you have Pitts. Like, I get it. You may not trust Mariota, but he gives you a better chance once you're down by like 17. Like, you got to throw the ball some more.
I just want Cordero Patterson back. Otherwise, I don't want to talk about this Falcons offense until then.
Fair enough.
Dallas Cowboys took down the Detroit Lions 24-6, covering as a 7-point favorite, under cashed at 49. Where's Restore the Roar Nation, Dwayne? Was the 1-5 start a part of that? Everyone and their mother picked the Lions as the upset team of the week. I don't know. I don't see people retracting on it. Hey, I went out there. I said Michael Gallup. I big proud, had about 6 old fashions in me at the wedding. I said, why couldn't Michael Gallup go for a big ass game here? Everyone was on CD.
I noticed that Michael Gallup's head was slightly off on the helicopter. Like, it might have been like
that was the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. See? Yeah. You got something to put there. You were actually telling everyone not to start Michael Gallup. Like, he actually fell down the ladder. Like, if you go look at the picture of the helicopter.
The helicopter is always supposed to be a fade. It was actually like wrongly correct for like a little bit. And everyone got this weird idea in their head. So like, I don't know, quit yelling at me, people. Okay. So all that nonsense aside, I will say with this Cowboys offense, I mean, hey, you win by freaking 18 points. Who cares how you got the win? Their defense still looks absolutely fantastic. And Dak just being out there healthy is a very good thing moving forward. We do now have a whopping 2-game sample size, more like 7 quarters now of Dak in this offense, and they really haven't been good. Looking at just week 1 and week 7, their EPA per play would be 31st in the league, only better than the Panthers. They'd be dead last in yards per play at just 4.7, touchdown drive rate 28th. Not good with these 2 starts. Again, just 7 quarters, but this was the league's 32nd ranked scoring defense. And the Cowboys really only were having success, running with Pollard and Zeke. And that really took until the second half to really get that going. What are your overall expectations on it's wild, man. All the way back in the year 2021, Cowboys were number 1 scoring offense and the Buccaneers were number 2 scoring offense. Like, how are you approaching this Cowboys offense now that we've seen this versus before the season? Because I know, hey, we talked about it enough times. At a minimum, we were expecting top 5, top 10 production. But if we had to kind of just rank the scoring offenses moving forward, I think the Cowboys would be a bit closer in the middle than maybe we would actually anticipate without doing that exercise.
Yeah, I think they're more in the middle. But we're early. I mean, really, this is only Dak's second game of the season. The first game was just the first game was far more worrisome than this one. I agree. I would like to see them put up, more against an offense that, everybody is basically thrashed. But they got ahead and they leaned into the run game. It was working. So it kind of is what it is. I do think that's in their range of outcomes now, right? That they're going to be much more willing to use the running game. Zeke really looked decent again. Like didn't look as good as
man. First time in a decade.
Yeah. Had the hurdle move out. He didn't look quite as good as he did last week, but was still pretty good. Had a 70.3 PFF rushing grade today. Tony Pollard had a 79.1. So yeah, they were getting it done on the ground. And I do think there's going to be games where if they can win this way, because they have less weapons in the passing game now, right? When you don't have Amari Cooper anymore, Dalton Schultz, let's face it, just has not been healthy all season. He tweaked the MCL again. Dalton Schultz gets hurt every week, and all I hear is he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. He's going to practice in full, but then he's not going to be able to really play, in full. He really landed awkwardly, though, early in the game. We're lucky that he didn't tear something on that play. But, like, he had a 20% target share, 31% targets per route run. Like, Dak really does like Dalton Schultz. Like, I have to say that. Over these last couple of years, like, he's really leaned into him. But Dak did spread it around today. CD still had a 24% target share, which was fine. That is his lowest of the season. Noah Brown had a 28%. You got to get the ball to Noah Brown. I think it's just going to be an offense where whenever they just want to run it, and they've got a lead, like they may not keep the pedal to the metal, right? Like what we used to see. And that's going to be a little bit of a difference, but I think overall it will be okay. Like I'm not going to freak out yet.
And we did, to be fair, see that kind of last year because there was that shootout against the Buccaneers in week 1. And then the Cowboys were just winning games pretty comfortably, Giants, Panthers, some things like that. And all of a sudden, Dak's pass attempts way closer to 30 than the 40, 50 or so that we were seeing, especially in 2020 before he got hurt when the Cowboys defense just wasn't even close to what we're seeing right now with Micah Parsons doing Micah Parsons things. I would note that Dalton Schultz did get a DPI in the end zone, so he was actually pretty close to having a touchdown on that total. And to Dwain's point, horrific play. I mean, it wasn't a cowboy collar, but he got like leaned bent back like it kind of, he ended up having his ankle and knee underneath him. So he was hobbling the rest of the game. I'm sure he's like going to have some DMPs, limited practice on the injury report, but hey, good for Dalton Schultz playing through the pain, going out there, getting his fantasy managers a solid 9.9 points. If you can look at that tight end position on your fantasy team, Dwain, like I know, hey, some of us have Andrews and too soon on Andrews. Some of us have Kelsey on the team out there, and we're consistently just thrilled about all that. But just anytime you can get those 8 or 9 points, not the worst floor to have out there. Now, on the other side of things, injuries, again, Schultz was playing banged up. Zeke looked like he got really banged up when he took a shoulder to the knee, but he came right back out there and didn't look any worse for the wear afterwards. The true shitty injury of the day was Amon-Ra St. Brown getting knocked out early with a concussion. We will see if he manages to take it back. After the initial kind of concussion stuff was happening, it seemed like the NFL was going to make it a lot harder for players to come back in just a week, but Kenny Pickett just did it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hopefully the sun god recovers in quick order. With that said, Dwain, the Detroit Lions in their last 8 quarters of football have scored 6 points. The number 1 scoring offense in the league through the first, 4 weeks of the year, all of a sudden can't do anything. Now, Amon-Ra's been hurt. DeAndre Swift has been out. DJ Chark has been out. Josh Reynolds was banged up. There's not many guys to get the ball to, but it's also Jared Goff at quarterback. Maybe we should have looked at those first 4 weeks and said, is this really going to be a top 5 scoring offense the rest of the way? Every now and then you do get the Seattle Seahawks, who, they can't keep on keeping on. What are your overall thoughts on this banged up Detroit Lions offense? Because I don't think Swift is necessarily like completely on the verge of coming back. We haven't gotten good news out of that. Amon-Ra's hurt again. Like, do you think this is an offense where we still want to be taking chances on guys like Josh Reynolds, like Jamal Williams, only getting 45% snaps out there because we got to keep Craig Reynolds and Justin Jackson happy? Is this still an offense that you think can help enable more players than just the Sun God and DeAndre Swift when they are healthy?
Well, I think you got to get the other players back. Jared Goff is not a quarterback that's going to overcome on his own. He needs the other weapons. He's a point guard, right? He needs all the surrounding weapons. And then we've seen him in the past do it with the Rams. He's led multiple good offenses in his history. So if they have all the weapons, I think it's fine. You're going to get some good games out of Jared Goff. You're still going to get the occasional stinker because he is Jared Goff. But right now, with him not having anybody, without all the guys that you named, I think it's really tough to trust, especially when even the guys that they have out there, are not or hardly able to practice, like Josh Reynolds. So it's a super banged up team. Jamal Williams, where his value really comes from is whenever they're scoring all the points, because he gets to score the touchdowns. He's still getting 62% of the rushing attempts, but to your point, like his overall snap rates are not that much because we've already talked about in the past, they're giving all the passing down work to Craig Reynolds. Essentially, DeAndre Swift and Justin Jackson are taking, not DeAndre Swift, Craig Reynolds and Justin Jackson are taking the old DeAndre Swift role, and Jamal Williams has picked up some extra carries in the meantime. So if they don't have Amon-Ra, if they don't have, at least Josh Reynolds healthy, it just makes it tougher to trust Jamal Williams. When they have those guys and they got the right matchup, he's going to always be a threat to score 1 or 2 touchdowns, and then he's fine. That basically puts him in the same range as Zeke, right? I mean, that's what Jamal Williams is right now in the role he has today. When DeAndre Swift is back, right, he's in a little bit of a lesser role than what we see with Zeke.
Jamal coulda, shoulda, woulda had a touchdown or at least not fumbled the ball at the freaking 1 yard line after Brock Wright got them down there in the first place. So again, close to a big day. Unfortunately, it was not. And have not seen Jamal get the sort of 3-down roll with the pass down work that I still think his skill set can handle, but apparently they are not willing to do that in Detroit. Titans took down the Colts 19-10, covering as 2.5-point favorites. The under cashed at 43. It's Derrick Henry in this offense, Dwain. I think Tannehill is still competent, but when they can play with the lead, Tannehill isn't going to throw the ball more than 20, 25 times. Today, we did only see 22 dropbacks, maybe an extra one with a scramble or something like that. But this is, again, a top 3 run-heavy offense in the NFL. And why not? Derrick Henry, 4th straight game with over 130 total yards. They're continuing to keep him steadily involved in the passing game. And he looks good out there, man. 112 of his 128 rushing yards came after contact. So you have Derrick Henry. You're loving Derrick Henry, and that's fantastic for your fantasy team. Anything happening in this wide receiver room, Dwain, because through 7 weeks, this is the only offense without a single, not just 1 week of one wide receiver. They have 0 top 24 finishes the entire season. It has been bad.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Woods is out there. That's all I can tell you. He's out there. 87% route participation. Nick Westbrook-Akini, 83% route participation. He had a 10% target share, but came up with a donut, in the fantasy score. So it's really just, it's all about Derrick Henry. I will say Derrick Henry has 16 targets over the last 4 games. That's a career high over any 4-game stretch in his career. They continue to try to get him the ball in the passing game. He had 3 more targets today. They did not use the 2-minute offense today in classic, Tennessee fashion. So I can't really tell you if that trend continued or not because they did not use it. I mean, it's just Derrick Henry. That's it. He's everything. 30 freaking rushing attempts today. So, just got to roll with it.
Dude, I mean, he has 17 targets now. In his first 3 years in the league, playing 15 and 16 games, he had 15, 17, and 18 targets. Like
the 16 are over the last 4. Like he only had 1 before that.
That's always been the thing with Derrick Henry. I'm not asking him to be on pace to catch 130 passes like Austin Ekeler. Just more than 1 per game, because when you get this guy in space, he does good things. Going into this week, Derrick Henry was number 1 running back in PFF's yards per route run metric. Does that mean he's the single best receiving running back in the league? No, but it means he's being pretty efficient with the opportunities given to him. Credit to the Titans for finding a way to, be 4-2, keeping on winning, and also getting their big dog plenty involved in all facets of the game. Ryan Tannehill did get rolled up on, pretty fluky situation where his lineman fell on him. It looked bad for a second. He did manage to return to the game. So again, one of those things where don't be surprised if he's out there on the injury report once some of the adrenaline wears off, but luckily seems to have avoided anything long term. On the Colts side of the ball, just another a terrible game for Matt Ryan. We gave him some credit last week. That was a good performance. This one was not. And now through 7 weeks, Jared Goff and Matt Ryan are tied with 14 turnover-worthy plays on the season. Ryan already with 9 interceptions. And this is your weekly reminder that last year in this offense, Carson Wentz only had 7 all season. So with the Matt Ryan experience, it has not been good. And it's really just, honestly, I think been worse for Jonathan Taylor. We saw Nyheim Hines out there a lot in their comeback mode kind of game script. And when you look up Dwain, and maybe it just was his first game back, but 55% snaps for Jonathan Taylor. Luckily, somehow, he got those 7 receptions out there to kind of salvage the day in full PPR. But it's just one of those things where this Colts passing game, I keep expecting the volume to go down, but if Ryan's going to play this shitty, they just kind of have to keep passing. It's a weird phenomenon that's going on, but the 3-1 Colts, man, we're getting a lot of this pass game volume for Taylor, for Hines, for Paris Campbell, for Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, better games than he has had this one. So it's just weird, Dwayne, to kind of have like low key now quite a few guys that we can be interested in pass catchers, even though, again, this is a bad passing game led by a quarterback turn the ball over than just anyone. So again, annoying performance from Jonathan Taylor aside, just because it's Jonathan Taylor and we'd like to see him, go for $150 and 2 touchdowns every week. How much are you believing in the Paris Campbell renaissance and Michael Pittman just keeping on, doing big things more weeks than not?
Yeah, so this is one of those offenses now where we can say, hey, there's volume. We can't necessarily say it's going to be quality volume. But it's better than the alternative, right? A bad team also with no volume. Like this is a bad offense, but at least they are dropping back and throwing it enough that you can sustain something. Paris Campbell, 23 fantasy points today in a PPR, 29% target share. He had 14 target shares over the first 5 games of the season. We had Frank Reich come out and say, Paris is really close. Like he's on the verge of a breakout. We're like, yeah, whatever. Over the last 2 games since then, 21 targets. So, you and I have been on Paris Campbell for I don't know how long, and we finally gave up. This is how this works. We finally gave up. And as soon as we do, 2 games in a row, Paris Campbell looks really good. So, I think Paris Campbell at this point, like I'd call him a wide receiver 4. He's going to have to earn it another week to get into the wide receiver 3 because Alec Pierce has also looked good at times, to your point. As much as I like the volume we have here, like I struggle to see this offense supporting 3 guys consistently. I think it can probably support 2, and one of them is going to be the odd player out, right? But I do think Paris Campbell's a guy that you can pick up. You can have him as a wide receiver 4. You're gonna have quite a few receivers on bye next week because you're gonna have the Chargers out. You're gonna have all the Kansas City Chiefs off. So if you're needing someone, to help fill in, like you can consider Paris Campbell. I just kind of ignored him this last week. So he's probably not on a lot of the waiver wires that, like in the leagues that we play in, he's probably already gone. We had him on every team and we dropped him. So, but that's just how it goes. But I do think there's something here. And look, he's a guy we've known is talented. It's just never clicked. He's always been hurt. And for whatever reason, now it's working. And so I think that's good. I think this hurts Michael Pittman, though, because Pittman now has 2 other guys challenging. Like if it really was still Pittman in this alpha scenario in this offense with all these passing attempts, wow, we would be looking at if Pittman had a chance to get to a 30% target share in this new Colts offense throwing all the time, like Michael Pittman would be a top 12 receiver. But the volume is good enough that it still keeps him in the wide receiver 2 conversation. Like if this offense was all of a sudden running the ball all the time and splitting up between these 3 guys, so if the offense does get better, that would be a real risk for Michael Pittman. Obviously, that would be bad for all 3 of them. And then you get into a scenario like what we see with the 49ers, where you just, you don't know which one's gonna score any points each week.
Only 4 players with more than 15 catches over these past 2 weeks. Tyreek Hill, Austin Ekeler, and then both Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell, again, doing big things with this suddenly pass-happy Colts offense because they kind of have to be. But yes, I do kind of tend to think that it will be mostly Pittman more weeks than not. And this can't – look, Jonathan Taylor only had 10 carries, game script, and first game back from injury. I do think we're going to get back to seeing them trying to ram Taylor down their opponent's throats more weeks than not. Your New York Giants, your 6-1 New York Football Giants took down the Jaguars 23-17, ever so closely, covering as 3-point dogs, under cashed at 43.5. So, hey, we got Saquon going out there, continuing to do Saquon things. He had this one run where, unblocked defender in the backfield. The jump cuts, like just on the replay, Dwayne, were absolutely out of this world. And it reminded me of this time in high school where I got a chance to play some. I was a linebacker. I felt good about, my ability with that. But some guys got hurt and I had to play a little bit of running back in a pinch. And I had a couple games, I was pass blocking well. And our starter came back. Guy ended up, playing like D1 football at Kent State. So he was like a legit stud. And he came back and I started thinking to myself, like, Ian, you're pretty good at football. You work hard. Like maybe I can compete for the starting running back job. And I just saw him get a carry and make this cutback that I just knew I would never even dream of attempting. Like just some guys can move differently. I was always, if there's 4 yards there, I'll get you 4. This is one of those things where Saquon, sometimes there's no yards there. And that's why he's, always popping on the rushing yards over expectation list. So we have Saquon. That's fantastic. Maybe, just maybe, we're starting to get a second viable fantasy guy here in Wan'Dale Robinson. So 11 targets on 40 routes this year, just a 4.5 yard ADOT. Look, I thought the whip routes last week looked pretty nice. I haven't seen anything incredibly impressive. I don't think we're looking at a Justin Jefferson breakout or even like a George Pickens, Garrett Wilson level caliber of player. But you know what, Dwayne? When there's nobody else to throw the ball to in this offense, and they are going to be a competent enough offense, I do think that Wan'Dale Robinson could at least be someone that we're all of a sudden looking at around that wide receiver 2 borderline. So I thought the hype last week was a little much based on what we've seen from him on the field. But hey, volume is all we can ask for a lot of times. And at a minimum, Wan'Dale Robinson has a lot of volume right now.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing we needed was an increase in route participation. Last weekend, he was at 35%. He got up to 81% this weekend. I know some people mentioned that he got hit, in the family jewels, and that caused him to be out a little bit. I will say that he did come back in at least. He played all the way until the very last drive of the game. The last drive of the game, there weren't any receivers out there except for David Sills. And those were all run blocking plays. There were like 6 plays on that drive. So Wan'Dale actually would have probably had an even higher, snap rate, which was 70%, but 81% on the routes. That's really good. 25% target share led the Giants today. I'm like you. So the way I look at him is like, maybe it's Jacoby Myers, right? That's what you're getting. You're getting someone that we think is especially in PPR, right? In a PPR league, half PPR, it's fine. You're not going to like him as much in standard. Standard, he's probably more of a wide receiver 4. But to your point, no one else is earning targets here. And this guy's coming out. He's a 2nd round pick. They're invested in him. The coaches like him. Like he will be able to go as far as his talent will take him. Like he will be the only barrier to, what can happen here. Because there's nothing really standing in his way. So, but man, if you can be between 22-24% of targets, that's going to be fine. I think that's a fine wide receiver 3. You're going to have weeks where you get wide receiver 2 performances. To your point, not going to be a ton of downfield stuff, a lot of stuff more around the line of scrimmage. But again, in a PPR, you're fine with that, especially when you got all these bye weeks coming up.
Daniel Jones, 202 passing yards and a touchdown and 107 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Danny Vick, as we've been calling him for years. Hey, man, like kudos to the guy. Every week in my quarterback column, I just, list out the quarterbacks projected to finish the season with over 100 rush attempts. And Daniel Jones is right there with Josh Allen. I believe before this week, he was projected for 133 by the end of the year, and it's only going to be up after this one. So hey, man, it's one of those things where last year before the concussion, we were kind of on Daniel Jones just being a better fantasy quarterback than he is in real life. And again, I'm not trying to slander the guy. He did play a good game out there. And you always see a couple plays throughout the game where he does seem to kind of put it all together. So I would just say in general, this is still going to be an offense going to Saquon first and foremost. And he has Wan'Dale. That's good, but that's still one wide receiver we feel a little bit okay about. Shout out to Darius Slayton for his touchdown too. But with Daniel Jones, man, could he be all of a sudden this borderline QB1 like Justin Fields, where we probably should start prioritizing him over? No. Okay.
No.
Fine.
But I think he's fine to mix in if you got a buy or whatever, and you need to, you need something. I think it's fine. Like he's going to be around 15 points. He had his blow up game, today, what I mean? And it's going to happen whenever you've got a quarterback that can rush like he does. When you score the rushing touchdown, like that just sets everything off, right? Like that, you get 100 yards rushing and you get, the rushing touchdown on top of it, like that's going to do it for you. So, and that's what you got out of Danny Dimes today, but he's usually going to be more like 30-40 yards rushing, right? And you maybe get a rushing touchdown every 4th game. I don't see a ton of hope for the passing offense is the problem, right? He's going to do what he's going to do on the ground. It's just hard to see a path where he's going to have like these 300-yard passing games. He's probably going to be more around 200, 225 yards. It's kind of a game manager type, offense. So that bothers me. So I'd call him a mid-range QB2, but he has the ability on any any week based on matchup, we may put him in that high end QB2, range. And if he comes through with a rushing touchdown, yeah, he's going to finish in the top 12.
Dwayne mentioned Wandale getting hit in the pecker. The only other injury was Daniel Bellinger getting hurt before the half. Unfortunately, got carted to the locker room. So,
man, that was with an eye. It was bad.
It was his eye?
Yeah, he got poked in the eye. A defender was coming in to tackle him, and I guess it looked like the defender was gonna go to punch for the ball, and he went right in his face mask and put his finger right in his eye. Like when he was leaving the field on the cart, like that eye was so red. He's going to see the eye doctor tomorrow. So I don't know how bad it is. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I catch myself when I say on here, it was just a concussion or just something. Cause that's a very serious injury, but when he gets carted off the field, it's just hopefully it's not an ACL taking you out for, the next year.
Yeah, he shouldn't be out for the season, but okay. He got poked really hard in the eye.
That's no joke, man. I mean, I watch UFC more than anything other than football, and you'll see these eye pokes, and you're just like, oh, come on, tough it out. And they show the replay, and you see two knuckles going deep into someone's eye. It's like, hey, you know what? Maybe that doesn't feel good. I'm not surprised there. On the Jaguars side of things, just another underwhelming performance. Trevor Lawrence did come back, and to be fair, they were about 6 inches away from actually winning this game on the game's final play. Trevor Lawrence threw a nice seed down the seam to Christian Kirk, just couldn't quite get into the end zone. But still, man, a lot of missed opportunities out there. James Robinson, in one of his rare snaps, beat Jalen Smith on a wheel. Would have been a touchdown with a perfectly thrown pass. It was not. Trevor Lawrence misses Zay Jones for a potential 17-yard touchdown. Also had a weird play at the end of the half where T-Law threw a Hail Mary that actually hit Zay Jones in the chest in the back of the end zone. His feet were already out of bounds. But again, a lot of missed opportunities here. Travis Etienne had an explosive run, one-on-one with him in the safety in the end zone. Fumbles it. So again, not the worst performance in the world. I'm not writing off this Jaguars offense. It's incapable of, scoring points more in the future. And this is a good New York Giants football team, as we have now been forced to believe and recognize after 7 weeks of this. But obviously, Dwayne, the big story here, even with Christian Kirk getting back on track, with Zay Jones and T-Law showing some signs, though, it's the Travis Etienne takeover. And I know exactly how you feel about this, Dwayne, because we both are way too overexposed to Etienne. But now maybe it could actually be a positive. It was funny when I was talking to Kevin Cole on our Wednesday edition of the podcast. I was going through some of Robinson's just bad stats, and Kevin was like, Jesus, man, how much exposure do you have to Etienne? Completely throwing this guy under the bus. So all that said, my biases, your biases aside, Dwayne, Travis Etienne just got an RB1 caliber workload today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you got to look at him as an RB1 moving forward, because he's slowly been building up to this. 80% of the snaps today, 55% route participation, 63% of the rushing attempts, 57% of the short down and distance snaps, 91% of the long down and distance snaps, 82% of the 2-minute offense. So he's pretty much taking it all over. James Robinson was only out there 17% of the snaps today. So it's kind of been slowly building up to this. And it was the thing is, it was from the beginning. We had seen James Robinson over the first 5 games really working on those first 1 or 2 drives, and then Etienne would rotate in over the last 2 weeks. Last week we saw Etienne and James Robinson kind of together. This week it was really just Etienne from the first drive on, and then he just didn't come off the field. Even after he fumbled, didn't matter. They went back to him. If you look at it at the end of the game, when they're trying to win the game, Travis Etienne is the one that they had on the field. So I feel really good about it. 21% targets per route run. That was also an improvement. He ended up with a 12% target share today. That's the number we need to come up, right? We want that target share. If it could stay around 15% per game, that would be really huge for Etienne. Now, he came through on efficiency today. He had the 14 rushing attempts, and he ended up turning that into 114 yards. And he's starting to break these long runs consistently now. So we've seen it 2 weeks in a row. It's come on though, man. You're this super explosive guy. Can we get it in? Can we take it to the house? Can we take it to the house? And you mentioned, he did have the fumble down inside the 5. He was going to take on the safety coming downhill at him. The other tackler came in from behind or from the side and just had it perfectly placed. He had it high and tight to the chest. It was just really a great punch out, honestly, by the defender. When I was watching, it wasn't like Etienne was just being, lazy with the football. And that's probably why it didn't really impact him. Sometimes, a defender just makes a really good play and you're going to fumble the ball. So if you have Travis Etienne, if you have been patient, I know this took some time, but explosive receiving backs like that, this is why we like them. They have all of these outs, and we're at a point now where, dude, today could have been a 25 to 30 point game for Travis Etienne.
Yep.
He was very close to that. And I know we've said that a couple times this year, but he's really due for an absolute monster game. So, and he's just starting to look better as well. The last 2 games, he's looked much more comfortable than what he did early in the season. The first 5 games, I was just kind of like, okay, like I know the data is saying this, but like when I'm watching him, what my eyes are telling me, which isn't always right. That's why we have the data too. I just didn't have as good of a feel, but these last 2 games, I think that he's looked really good. And there's been some good blocking too. The Jaguars every game, man, are like popping one of their runners for a big run on just a perfectly blocked play.
6.1 yards per carry now in the season for Etienne. That's 3rd highest mark in the league among 58 qualified backs. 12th in missed tackles for us. He's 24th in yards after contact, but that's still a number right there with Kenneth Walker and Jonathan Taylor as well. So he's passing the eye test. Everything beyond it saying it's good too. I know what you're saying about him, not like he gets these 40, 50-yard runs, but you're like, you look like the fastest guy in the field. Can you not take that 80? It's like
running out of gas or what?
It's like in Mario Kart when you got that golden mushroom and like you sometimes don't get like the huge top speed because you're boosting every single time. So it's a lot of fun to watch. He's again one of the most explosive guys out there. Look, as a diehard ignorant Ohio State fan, the 2 players playing against Ohio State that just scared me the most over the last 10 years every time they touched the ball were Saquon Barkley and Travis Etienne. So it's just good to see that still is Etienne, because his last year at Clemson, we had the concerns about the drop off and we kind of attribute to the offensive line. And then coming back from the list, Frank, who knows, looking really good. I mean, hey, it's just 1 week, Dwayne. We'll hear what they have to say about James Robinson. Hopefully Peterson's not hopefully he doesn't give us like a rational excuse and we got to worry about this going back into a 2 RB system. If this usage persists, I mean, look, Etienne was on the field for 82% of the snaps. Saquon was on the field for 83%. That is top 10, top 12 usage. Next week, though, yes, I'm starting Etienne everywhere, but probably more so of a mid-low end RB2. I believe we do only have 2 teams on the bye.
Yeah, I think, we've got to let these guys kind of earn their way back up. Like his utilization profile today is that of a low end RB1. Yeah. But like we need to see it another week. But I agree with you. Like, so I had moved him in. I have him as a high end RB3 this week. So I'll probably move him to like a mid range RB2 this week. And then if he does this again next week, like he'll move into RB1 territory. But the utilization profile today, if it persists, yeah, he'll perform like he's going to be an RB1 next week. We just don't know for sure if they won't get Robinson a little bit more involved. Because to be fair to Robinson, I know Travis Etienne has outperformed him in every way. But Robinson, I mean, he's had his moments too this season where he's looked nice. So I want to give him some credit for being a guy that's undrafted, went through the Achilles injury, and to still be battling through it. We'll see what happens. I hope for, all the exposure that I have with Etienne, nothing personally against James Robinson, that this is all Etienne all the way. There's also a very competitive game through the whole thing, So, I mean, this is a game where it was always either, they couldn't let up at any point, the Jaguars. So that also plays into being a Travis Etienne type of game, which honestly is that's the profile we were looking for, a player that we thought would be on the field if games were close or if they were trailing. And that's the biggest thing. He has that role for sure. Yeah. So at a minimum, that makes him a low end RB2, right? Just on that alone. But if he's going to also be able to gobble up even more beyond that, then man, the sky's the limit for Travis Etienne, especially if he just continues to get better, which is what really seems to be the case right now. Every week he's looking a little bit better.
Any thoughts if J-Rob could be on the trade block? We'll see. It's just kind of hard for us to have any idea about it right now.
I doubt it, just because teams want to have another back, I mean, and because the injuries, man, look at all the backs that are getting hurt. I mean, you got to have a decent backup. And I think J-Rob gives you that. And the other thing is, like, teams just don't want to trade a lot, and they're not going to give a lot away, for a running back. Like Rams, good luck trading Cam Akers. I think you're going to probably have to just release him. Yeah. I mean, somebody might send a 6th-round pick. I guess that's better than nothing. But I don't think the Jaguars are going to be in a scenario where they want to give away someone like James Robinson for a 6th or a 5th-round pick. I think they'd rather just keep him on the roster. And if something happens to Etienne, they know they at least have someone that they can trust.
I get it. You've been able to trust Robinson a little bit more in these past weeks. What we say, though, when Etienne wasn't doing well to start the year, don't overly panic, because even if Robinson isn't someone that we can start right now, I don't think JaMychal Hasty would be a guy at all if either of these running backs go down. If something happens to Etienne or something happens to Robinson, the other guy is going to be, an 80% plus snap back. So try to keep James Robinson on those rosters as much as possible, because he is one of these handcuff running backs now at this point, just like Etienne was when Robinson looked like the starter, where they're going to be in that legit every single week RB1 conversation just one injury away, not 2 or 3 like some of these other backfields. Washington Commanders took down the Green Bay Packers 23-21, covering obviously as 4-point dogs the over cash at 41.5. Terry McLaurin game, man. Terry McLaurin has the best like 4-5 catch, 60, 70-yard games of like any wide receiver in the league. He did score a touchdown, and so much of it came in Jair Alexander's direct coverage. So it looked like they were moving Jair more around with Terry. I didn't get the exact, I usually find out on Tuesday from our lovely back end PFF folks, exactly who was being shadowed out there at over a 50% clip. But Jair is someone that, I say it every single week in my shadow article, has not shadowed since week 7, 2020. They used to do it earlier in his career. I think Amari Cooper going for like 250 on him back a couple years ago probably didn't help that, initial thought process with it. So he sticks to his side of the field most of the time. But hey, wherever he was, Terry McLaurin found a way to put up yards on him out there. So that was a lot of fun, Dwain, and just good to see, I think, from an offense that, again, has been so inconsistent this year. Didn't exactly see Taylor Heineke, stabilize everything. He had a week high 5 turnover-worthy plays. I say that now, Tua might have beat that mark, with the Sunday night performance. But when I looked it up, Taylor Heineke had the most turnover-worthy plays, actually had a lower average target depth than Carson Wentz. I watch Taylor Heineke, Dwain, and it just seems like he truly believes he can make every throw out there on the field, even though we've kind of seen his physical limitations at this point, don't necessarily make that possible. But hey, he went out there, got them the W, and we didn't even see him bring that rushing upside the table, which actually makes him fantasy viable. And I believe last year got him 5 top 12 finishes throughout the year. So confident enough in the Heineke experience to get Terry McLaurin back into, that weekly low-end wide receiver 2 conversation. I'm probably not.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, and it's tough because in this game script, they just led the Packers, for a good portion of the game. So they only had to drop back to pass 49% of the time. They chose to run the ball 51%. So it's hard to get a really good read. They had the game script go the way they wanted. They wanted to have a game manager kind of game. Got the running game going, got the ball to Brian Robinson, got Antonio Gibson going a little bit on the ground. They had 31 rushing attempts between the two of them. So
Curtis got 5.
Yeah. And Curtis Samuel had 5 as well. And then J.D. McKissick had 1, and then Heineke had a couple. So yeah, it was a heavy run, centered game plan, because they were leading. So it just makes it tough. But that also, you could make an argument that, well, then Heineke, if he only threw for like 200 yards today and they hardly threw it. But I think that's what they would like, right? With Heineke, they would rather manage the game, win with efficiency through the air. But it is the Commanders. Like, I don't know that the Commanders can really lead anyone besides maybe the Packers. I don't know how much this offense can do, but it was nice. Like, he and Terry, seemed to have a little bit more of a connection than Terry McLaurin and Carson Wentz had. So that's a positive. Terry McLaurin's a really good receiver. Like, nothing's changed. It's just like Elijah Moore is probably still a good receiver. We know DJ Moore is still a good receiver. Sometimes these circumstances are just a lot to overcome. Like you mentioned it last week, like people doing victory laps about, just draft the talent. Well, we've got just as many stories where, oh, hell, I drafted the talent. It sucks, because the situation is so bad. Like there were really, we had different players come down on different sides of that argument. You could have used the logic appropriately on one player, and if you applied it to the next, you were wrong. And so it's sometimes, these things, there's luck involved with fantasy football because we can't predict everything. We try to do as good as we can with the data that we have. But Terry McLaurin, at the end of the day, like he's still a really good player, so it was nice to see him get his 26% target share. Curtis Samuel also had a 26% target share. Samuel's not popping for the big plays or anything. But like every week he's like giving you 12 to 15 points. Like, what you're getting. And so if some of the big plays could start to come, that could open things up for him. Of course, we did not have Jahan Dotson today. We didn't have Diami Brown. They were both out. You also didn't have Logan Thomas today. So this was a really consolidated passing attack. That probably also helped out Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I think John Bates was out too, and then their third string tight end Cole
Bates played.
It
was a rotation with the tight ends today. Armani Rogers led the way. Then it was Cole Turner. Then it was John Bates.
Cole Turner got concussed. So yeah, they were having all sorts of injury issues now.
Oh, he got a concussion today? Okay.
He did at one point. So only other thing to talk about is this backfield. Brian Robinson did get 20 carries and led the way, but it's still 3 backs, 47% snaps for Brian Robinson, 39% for Antonio Gibson, who low-key has been looking very explosive and good in the passing game really throughout most of this season. And J.D. McKissick just 17% snaps because they weren't in a situation, surprisingly, where they had to, worry about coming back from behind. So Brian Robinson, Dwain, look, he's kind of like Jamal Williams. Like he's going to give you 15 to 20 carries in a lot of these weeks, but we're going to look up at the snaps and he's not going to be over 50% sometimes, which surprises us. And it's an offense that not expecting a lot of consistent scoring from. So that's fine to have on your team. But I do think a little bit with Brian Robinson, as great of a comeback story as it is, that his, actual productivity is getting a little bit inflated, especially if Antonio Gibson keeps arguably outplaying him with his touches. So Brian Robinson's fine, but he's 2 injuries away from being an RB1, not 1.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to give you 13 to 15 rushing attempts per game. And if you have a game like this where you get the lead and game script swings in your favor, that turns into 21. If you have a game script where you're getting your ass kicked, that turns into 11. That's what it is. It's going to be somewhere in that middle typically, but depending on what happens with the game script, you got a range of like 11, 12 to 20 carries. And, typically you're probably going to be somewhere in the middle of that. And so if you know that and you can handle that in a standard league, that's fine. Like in standard league, like if you're just doing your projections, you guys know if you've ever done projections like that, that'll send a running back really high. I always crack up when I look at my stuff and I'm like, damn, Brian Robinson's like, like your 40th player over in standard. Then you look at PPR and you're like, he's like 90. It's just a huge difference between the two formats. So just pay attention, to which one you're in. If you're in a half PPR, like you're somewhere in the middle of that. But Antonio Gibson did look good. But he's still the guy that's getting squeezed big time. And he's a guy that you're probably looking normally at 5 carries. It turned into 10 today for him. So, and then he gets squeezed whenever they're trailing because McKissick gets more of his work. Robinson is the one that actually has the most stable job. We know that he's going to get the majority of the rushing attempts.
On the Green Bay side of things, just again, same thing with the Buccaneers. We keep expecting them just to snap out of this finally, but here we are really, man, going out into week 8, and this offense has continued to look not even average, mediocre to bad more weeks than not out there. Luckily, we did finally get Aaron Jones taking over that pass down role that he should have really had all season long, but was splitting things a lot more with A.J. Dillon. Going into this game, Aaron Jones had 23 targets and A.J. Dillon had 20. In this one, though, it was Aaron Jones leading the way, 76% snaps, 8 carries, and 10 targets. Dillon just 28% snaps, 4 carries, and no targets. Dwain, did we see in the back end utilization like more pass down work, specifically 2-minute stuff for Aaron Jones? Because we were trending this way in weeks really 1 through 5, and then last week it kind of took a step back and it went back to this 50-50 situation. But we did see Jones give them the most juice. The touchdown catch he had was just fantastic, and he's been a great rusher all season long. Even on this game, 8 carries for 23 yards. When I looked after just the first round of 1 p.m. slates, he had a week high 6 missed tackles forced just on the carries. So Aaron Jones has been their best offensive player all season long. If he can get that 76% snap rate, okay, we're back in the RB1 conversation there. How confident are you that this is going to persist and not just go back to more of the 50-50 split?
Well, we talked about this last week. It's just going to be hard to really be super confident until you see multiple weeks of this. Like, you could easily flip back next week. Aaron Jones makes the most sense. He should be on the field on passing downs, like no doubt about it. We've talked about it. We talked about it last week. Aaron Jones is the best playmaker on this team, probably the best playmaker in the passing game. And guess what? They used him this week. He had a 31% target share, 40% targets per route run, 71% route participation. That's elite. That's up there in the very top notch, guys like Alvin Kamara, CMC. If he gets that and that continues, he's going to be an RB1. Right. I just can't tell you for sure that it's going to. I think a lot of this, again, comes back to game script. You had the Packers dropping back to pass 76% of their play calls. That's not normally what they want to do. They really want to be, if we're going back to the old Madden playbook, they want to say, balance, pass balance, right? In some games, if they can, be run balance. They don't really want to be pass heavy, nor should they. They don't have the weapons to be pass heavy. They have the quarterback, but they don't have the wide receivers to be a pass heavy team. So I think some of it will still come back to game script. I think you're still going to have situations where we're going to look up and be like, well, crap, man, Aaron Jones was only out there, he only got 50% of the rushing attempts today. Whereas, this weekend he got 69% and A.J. Dillon only got 31%. But with the Packers looking so bad, man, A.J. Dillon, which I've been below consensus on A.J. Dillon in my rankings since week 1. You and I talked about it. We liked A.J. Dillon, but I just thought he got out of hand, in draft season. When people by the end of draft season, people were taking him in round 4. I just thought people were losing their damn minds. And so it's just kind of this is the way it's playing out. A.J. Dillon, yes, he can catch a swing pass if everybody else is covered. But if you're trying to create a passing game around him, you just can't do it. He's not that kind of guy. Aaron Jones is. And so it would make sense, Ian, for Aaron Jones to be the one that's out there. But I mean, do you feel conviction that we're going to see it again next week? I'm going to keep Aaron Jones as a mid-range RB2 this week. I'm going to write him up in the utilization report, talk about all the things that we're seeing and like look at the trends over the last 4 weeks. But I mean, maybe I'll move him up to like low end RB2. I hate just moving these guys around though, just to move them. It's like I really want to see a true trend. I probably need one more data point to really feel that good about it. But what it does show you, we know the ceiling's there for Aaron Jones. I don't know if I trust the coaching staff. I mean, what are your thoughts?
It's one of those things where, okay, maybe he's going to be RB13 instead of RB15. I think I had him there this week, but look,
you're starting him.
Jones, so
if you got him on your roster, you're starting him. So,
unfortunately, we don't have that same sort of feeling with anyone else on this Packers offense.
No.
Definitely not AJ. AJ Dillon is like what we said about James Robinson. Do not cut the man because he is one injury to Aaron Jones away from having a true every down role and just being an absolute beast. But for now, you can't start him. In the wide receiver room, we did have Allen Lazard suffer a shoulder injury. He was on his way to a pretty nice performance before that happened. And beyond that, Sammy Watkins was back. Amari Rodgers was starting to get going, but was fumbling and then also had a potential 50-yard pass go off his hands. Romeo Doubs, unfortunately, goose-egged on 4.
He had a rough day. 44.5 PFF receiving grade. I saw some drops. And look, drops aren't sticky. Look, he's a young player, but he had a rough one. He had a rough outing today.
Was his route participation still
he's
up
fine.
there?
Yeah, 93%. Led the team, 13% target share. It just wasn't where it wasn't his day. Sometimes we all have bad days. Romeo had a bad day.
Romeo Doubs had a bad day. So keep an eye out on that Lazard shoulder injury. Again, Dwayne, I still think there's anyone really in this offense receiver room. Like, okay, Sammy Watkins will probably have his name on some waiver wire articles. And if you need, wide receiver 5 type, then okay, go for it. But the only other guy I'd be somewhat interested in is Robert Tonyan, coming off of season high marks in his route rate last week. What did he have out there? Would that
71% route participation?
That's 2 straight weeks.
That's 2 straight weeks. So it's not the 80% that we want, but it's good enough, so I mean, he's functional at this point. He only had 5.6 fantasy points today, 4 targets, 3 receptions, 26 yards. But like, high end tight end too, right? Is probably, that's typically the range you're going to put someone that has the, utilization profile that we're seeing from Robert Tonyan right now. Tonyan, hear that, Ian? Tonyan,
hey, man.
You finally trained me.
I've been a Tonyan devotee with that pronunciation for years, man. You got tits in your last name. You would think it would teach you to like pronounce people's last names better. I nailed Amani Aruwariye a couple times too. Just did it again. Look at me. All right. Final 1 p.m. game to go over here. The Ravens took down the Browns 23-20. Browns did cover as 6.5 point dogs. The under cashed at 46.5. So this is now the 4th straight game from Lamar Jackson, man, where it just hasn't looked all that good. He had the 12 or might have even more than that total touchdowns the first 3 weeks. I was saying La MVP, all this, and I saw great articles being written just about him having just more on his plate really than ever. I think it was Stephen Ruiz over at the Ringer or taking like a Kevin Cole stat, just all these great minds meshing, but I think it was like 81% of the Ravens total offense was going through Lamar Jackson in those first 3 weeks of the season. Just hasn't been that good over these past few weeks. So he still has 59 rushing yards. We have Mark Andrews open down the seam. He kind of got held. It could have been a touchdown from about 20 yards otherwise, but yeah, Andrews, goose egg. Rashad Bateman, just 4 catches, 42 yards. The backfield did trend towards Gus Edwards, at least in terms of carries, but then you look at the snaps and you see that he did only have a 37% lead. Justice Hill, 32%. Kenyon Drake, 25%. Just, it's the grossest thing ever when you can't even have one running back over a 40% snap rate. That was the case here. So Gus found the end zone a couple times, Dwayne, and if we can get 15 carries in this offense, then I will feel good about Gus being in that RB3 conversation. But man, we're starting Lamar Jackson no matter what. It just sucks that, and Mark Andrews, goose egg aside, obviously, but it sucks that out of this backfield and then like with Bateman and Duvernay, we just don't really have anyone other than Lamar and Andrews to really hang our hat on. Or maybe you are confident that Gus Edwards, only his first game back from injury, so it makes sense that snap rate does go up. Do you think Gus could all of a sudden be someone knocking on that RB2 door?
I mean, I think it could go up, but this team has shown us, that they really want to use a committee, and it's not like any of these guys are superstars. We like Gus Edwards, and so look, yes, it could happen. But do we really think he's another player coming off a knee injury, even if they thought he was just totally outperforming the other guys, at least not in the next few weeks? I don't see him getting 50, 60% of the rushing attempts. And look, here's the problem. I mean, Lamar Jackson, averages 27% of the design rushing attempts every week. He was below that this week. That's a huge chunk, man. When 30% is gone immediately to the quarterback, and this is a team that hasn't been running as much, they got to today. They only dropped back to pass on 34% of their plays today. So they had a lead. They were not comfortable. Like the game stayed close, but they never felt like they really had to try to, push it and pass the ball a ton. And so I think that worked in their favor today. And so that is what boosted Gus Edwards, not the fact that he was taking over the backfield. His 38%, he had 38% of the rushing attempts, but on a game where, they're running the ball all the time, that turns into 16 rushing attempts. And a typical game, that's like 9. That's like 10. Like the season high, I believe, I'd have to go back and look. I was just looking at because I wrote about it last week. The season high for any Ravens running back coming into this game and rushing attempts was 13. So Gus Edwards beat that straight out of the gate, but you had 11 to Kenyon Drake, right? So that was only 2 below, like the week 4 high that we had seen from J.K. Dobbins. The game script worked out perfectly. And so I think it's going to continue to be a split. You're going to see Gus Edwards more around 10 to 11 carries. You're going to see Kenyon Drake around 6 to 7, and you're still going to have Justice Hill involved. Justice Hill's going to handle most of the passing down work. I do think over several weeks we could see Gus edge away a little bit, and I do think he's the best. Looks like the better player, right, of all these guys, and he's also the best complement with Lamar, right? Yeah. Because he's a guy. Lamar is much more like, if you're looking at the two together, right? He's the lightning, and then Gus is the guy that will just pound you straight in the face. These other two guys can't do that. And so I do like that fact about Gus Edwards. I do think that's going to give him an opportunity to score more touchdowns, all those sort of things. He had 43% of the short down and distance work today, 29% to Justice Hill, 0% to Kenyon Drake. So, yeah, I like Gus. But again, this is kind of back to like what we talked about with Washington earlier. They got to run the ball so much, it made that, Brian Robinson's carries, that's what gave him 21. The same thing happened here for the Ravens today. I will say on Rashad Bateman, out there 73% route participation. So not quite where we want him, but that's kind of where he's been. Devin Duvernay managed to stay out there for 77%. So he was actually the wide receiver 1 from just a pure route standpoint. But 38% target share today for Rashad Bateman. Didn't end up turning into a lot in the box score. He only had 8.2 PPR points. He had 5 targets, 4 receptions, 42 yards. But still a positive thing, to see him come out and demand that kind of target share, especially coming off the foot injury. So I think that's a positive sign for Rashad Bateman.
He almost scored a touchdown too. He got a little screen from the 5 and just got tackled 1 yard short of the goal line. So all good points with Gus. And I even wrote down as you were talking, like Jamal, Brian Robinson. It's a 3 running back committee with the lead guy not getting pass down work. But hey, I'll take the Ravens offense over this banged up edition of the Lions, and definitely the usual edition of Washington. So not Gus slander at all, people. I drafted so much Gus in best ball this year before I really actually I should have realized kind of the extent of his knee injury before I was doing that. We were having some of those conversations in June, Dwain. We're just like, maybe should have kept a little better track of this, and we certainly will next year. But yeah, just in terms of averaging at least 5 yards per carry, I think with over 100 rush attempts in each of your first 3 career seasons, Jamal Charles, Gus Edwards, Nick Chubb, D'Angelo Williams, LaShawn McCoy, Brandon Jacobs, and Tiki Barber. Only guys to do that, I believe, in the last 25 years. So Gus Edwards on a list with a lot of great running backs. Maybe he's also a pretty damn good running back in his own right. I know J.K. Dobbins averaged 6 yards per carry, and he's a great man too. But once again, always illegal in the year 2022 to have more than one really good running back on the squad. Only other note for the Ravens is Lamar almost had a passing touchdown at the goal line to not Andrews, Josh Oliver. Unfortunately, it got knocked out after having both hands on it. I would say it was a drop. On the Cleveland Browns side of things, Jacoby Brissett had a nice-ish bounce-back performance, had some nice nails throws at the end. I mean, he actually did throw a 30-yard touchdown to Amari Cooper that unfortunately got negated because of offensive pass interference. So you see him go out there and make a couple nice downfield throws. He's certainly someone that's not just going to check his way down the field. I think that's been a big problem for Kareem Hunt this year. We aren't getting the checkdowns. Jacoby's kind of got that Jimmy G in him where you might not like the result, but you got to give the man some respect sometimes for being willing to throw the ball over the middle or downfield. But with that said, we have really seen this Browns offense start to merge back to being more of a below average unit than what they were looking like the first 3-4 weeks of the year when they were actually a top 10 scoring offense. So they did lose David Njoku to an ankle injury, although Adam Schefter said it isn't serious. he was walking in a walking boot and using crutches after the game. So it's just funny how that's like not
He was on the
serious,
verge
but
of a freaking monster game.
yeah.
He still finished with a 29% target share, and he was only out there half the routes. Like the dude was like he was going off today. He had 7 targets, 7 receptions for 71. You were probably getting over 100 yards and maybe could have squeezed out a touchdown with Njoku. He was feeling it today. So, man, I really hope that he's okay, because this guy, like, finally everything was starting to click for him in his career. Like, he's just barely on the outside looking in, right, of being inside that top 6 tight end group. And like this performance might have put him, right there where we just had to finally draw a new line in the tier where we're like, okay, fine. Like David Njoku, we're going to put you right here under Dallas Goedert, and we're going to draw a new line under the tier. Like that was probably happening after today's game. So hopefully it's not the dreaded high ankle. When you hear when you hear walking boot and you hear ankle, unless it's like Tyreek Hill, then he just immediately like gets in like a hyperbaric chamber or something and just, he's fine like 2 days later. That definitely worries you. So what I would say, Harrison Bryant, like if you're in a situation where the waiver wire is pretty picked over, Harrison Bryant, he's shown us a couple times in the past, Ian, like that he can come through for you. So you definitely don't want to drop Njoku, but it's a situation where you can actually go to the backup because Bryant has been a good player, and most people in your league are not going to mess with Harrison Bryant. So you can probably get him for next to nothing, or you don't have to worry about using your top waiver wire claim to get him.
Unless you're in a league with Evan Silva and he finds out that mother
Mackey
winner,
Dwain. This is true. So if you're in a league with Evan, disregard what I just said.
Love you, Evan. Yeah, Harrison Bryant, again, it's one of the reasons why Austin Hooper wasn't able to really make that great of a use out of his big contract, because you had Njoku and Harrison Bryant deservedly getting some reps as well. So I had the same thought with Njoku as he was doing that. I mean, I have at least 3 teams where I have to, I have been painstakingly deciding between Njoku versus Kyle Pitts every single week. But I think after seeing what we've seen from Njoku this year, and I was talking about it, on our preview edition of the podcast, just really most efficiency stats, man, it's Kelsey Andrews and then David Njoku right behind him. So it's right now, man, I'm with you behind Dallas.
I moved him past Pitts like 3 weeks ago. Like he's just,
well,
he's right there.
You're smart, man. Fuck.
Well, I didn't mean it that way. It's just like, that was more to do with Arthur Smith than Kyle Pitts, himself.
I hear you. So it is one of those things where Harrison Bryant, he will be definitely in that, upside. I think of it kind of like when it goes from like Darren Waller to Foster Moreau, where, hey, this is a guy that's going to be in that role. You can feel good about it. Don't just cross the name out and put him back in there. God, was like week 8 last year or something. People were just getting a little bit carried away with it. But Harrison Bryant, again, a former Mackey Award winner, someone that you should be looking at on those waiver wires. Amari Cooper had a nice 55-yard catch. Again, almost had over 100 with a touchdown. Just unfortunately had to, push off on defender, which would he have caught it if he didn't? Probably not. So definitely a part of it. But unfortunately, Dwayne, we did see another week of Kareem Hunt just not getting that many chances to touch the football. He did find his way into the end zone on a short rushing touchdown to somewhat salvage the day, but just 6 overall touches. And the problem with Kareem, like these other disappointing guys, Robinson, AJ Dillon, like we're not cutting him because that worst Kareem Hunt is one of the highest upside handcuffs in all fantasy football. But I think my issue, Dwayne, and what's going to really force me to start probably picking the other guy in a lot of close start sit questions with Kareem Hunt, like this game, they weren't losing by all that much. I mean, by the end of the third quarter, at halftime, it was 13-10 Ravens. At the end of the third quarter, it was 20-13. So like Nick Chubb was able to really stay in and get his usage on the ground. But we saw this last week in a game where they were really getting killed, and all of a sudden Kareem Hunt still, even in that game script, wasn't actually getting all those, comeback mode targets and stuff that are supposed to be making his day. So at this point, Kareem Hunt, to kind of meet his fantasy value, he just needs to be extremely efficient on 10 to 15 combined carries and targets in an offense that is honestly trending downwards a bit. So Kareem Hunt, it's just one of those things where he's consistently been a low-end RB2 during the first 3 years of his career with the Browns. Moving forward, though, notwithstanding some of the tricks that bye weeks can play on our rankings, Kareem Hunt to me seems like way more of a mid-tier, even low-end RB3 moving forward. Just again, which I don't know what his outs are unless Chubb gets hurt.
Yeah. His role's the same. His role's the same as it was last year. It's the same as it was the year before. So I don't know if he's just not playing as well. Like his efficiency numbers are down. So, I mean, we do know that he's not playing as well. The question is it long-term? Like today, like he got tackled behind the line of scrimmage twice. He couldn't even help it. If you saw those two plays, like
that was ridiculous.
If you guys were watching it, there was nothing Kareem Hunt could do about that. Like he just, the linebacker shot the gap. As soon as he had the ball, he was already being tackled at the handoff, basically. And so you can't really put that on Kareem Hunt. His touchdown run was a tough run, kind of that vintage Kareem Hunt. He had another reception, where he, made a guy miss, and then put his head down and ran past a guy as well. So I don't know. I agree. I'm not going to move him down to low end RB3. I'm going to leave him where I've got him, probably high end RB3, just because I don't think he's completely lost like his fastball or anything. But the biggest problem is, you mentioned it earlier, like he's not getting the targets. Like he's
only on pace for 41 this year.
Yeah, that's what's killing him. He's still out there, long down and distance, 100% of the snaps. 2-minute offense, 76% of the snaps. Inside the 10-yard line, every week, dude, he outsnaps Nick Chubb. So he's out there for the high leverage stuff inside the 10-yard line. Those are all the things that we've seen from him in the past. He's just not getting as many opportunities. But maybe if you have a situation where Njoku's out, like that could potentially free up a little bit more for Kareem Hunt. We did see Donovan Peoples-Jones get a little more involved this week, but typically he is much more of a down the field guy. It's really the running backs are often competing for targets with, the tight ends. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. That might help Hunt out a little bit, because really over the last several years, with the Browns offense, like the tight ends haven't been doing much. And so Kareem Hunt they also did not have this freaking dude named Amari Cooper. So Amari is a magnet, man. Amari, like today, didn't have a huge target share, but I mean, the dude's like been over 10 targets 4 times already this season. So that's something that Kareem Hunt didn't have to deal with in the past. There wasn't necessarily someone that could demand those kind of looks in the offense. So I think that's the season Njoku's having, how well Amari Cooper's playing, and the targets he's getting. That's what's basically taking away from Kareem Hunt.
And again, I didn't mention the one backbreaker with Jacoby's performance, but 5 sacks, he fumbled twice. The one issue is I see a little bit with Geno Smith too, and obviously Geno's playing far better than Jacoby throughout this year. But
dude, Jacoby's playing way better than I ever thought he would. He and Geno both. I have to give them both credit.
Again, like I'm not trying to make this a Jacoby versus Geno argument. They have been playing, but they'll have these stretches where they're playing really well, and then all of a sudden it's like you just don't see the blindside defender coming, and hey, Jacoby also
both throwing the ball with extreme confidence. Both have some issues as far as pocket awareness. Now, it's not Zach Wilson bad, just turn around and running into the nearest defender, like scrambling straight to them.
Zach Wilson's a winner, though, Dwain. He's a winner.
Yeah, he's a winner. They need to convert him to Taysom Hill. But Jacoby, man, has just impressed me though with the confidence and the accuracy. Yeah. Like, I mean, what he's done for Amari Cooper, like they are in complete sync.
Jacoby Brissett, I think, will be playing football for the next 10 years. He's going to be a top 35 quarterback in the league for a long time. Continues to do just that. Before we get into the 4:00 games, just want to pay a few bills via some ad reads. Shout out to our friends over at DraftKings. Guys, your kicker's lining up for an onside kick. The chances of regaining possession are slim. The stakes are high and the tension is higher. Your pulse racing. He kicks and you watch as the ball lands. Oh my goodness. You can make every play feel this exciting with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and their unbeatable offers. Right now, new customers can make any $5 NFL bet and get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Check this out. In addition to the usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. And to make things even sweeter, you can throw down stepped up same game parlays once per game all season long. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code PFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Just place a $5 bet on any football game only at DraftKings Sportsbook using code PFF. Note that minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See the show notes for details. Also got to always give a lovely shout out to our sponsors over at Sleeper Fantasy, my favorite place to play season-long football, even when my 0 RB team gets hurt with injuries and I'm starting losing to our PFF producers out there. So humbling experiences like that aside, love everything that Sleeper does, and really been lauding them all throughout the offseason with their customizable rules. My biggest beef with fantasy football is that just one catch 40 yards downfield is the same as Jimmy G flipping at 6 inches to Debo, and Sleeper even has like some tiered average target depth sort of ways to help adjust that and help get the most out of the league. But with Sleeper, always have a small little segment, and today we got to look at top waiver wire fill-ins for Monday Night Football. And guys, with this Patriots wide receiver room, Kendrick Bourne, a mix of hurt / maybe being traded. We know Jacoby Myers is the guy and probably already starting in a plenty of 12-team leagues at a minimum. But Tyquan Thornton and Devontae Parker in this condensed 3 wide receiver set against a Bears defense that's just been pretty bad all season long. especially against the run. But with Thornton and to a lesser extent Parker, we are looking at guys that have that big play potential. So hopefully, you have better options for yourself Monday night. But God forbid something happens in the meantime, don't be afraid to ride with the impressive rookie Thornton or the I still maintain good at football Devontae Parker. Wasn't that long ago here this season that he had a nice little 150-yard gain for himself. Speaking of Mr. Zach Wilson, Dwain, another win. Zach WWW Wilson, 4 in a row. Jets 16, Broncos 9. Jets covering as 2.5-point favorites under 37. So look, guys, I'm kidding. I see how bad Zach Wilson looks out there, and it's like, instead of no, like yes throws, it's no. Oh my God, no. Are you kidding me? Type of throws out there sometimes. But it's fun, man. Probably not for Jets fans, probably not for his receivers, but I enjoy watching a player have every single person like just throw it away and he decides to throw it 20 yards over the middle, because that's just what Zach Wilson does, and it's how he plays football. So all that aside, unfortunately, when he's going to be playing football like that, we aren't going to have many viable receivers, even in a game where Elijah Moore wasn't in the picture. Garrett Wilson, just 5 targets. Corey Davis freaking got hurt with an MCL sprain. I mean, Dwayne, if Elijah Moore, which doesn't seem to me like it's going to be a long, who knows, actually. We'll see what happens when Elijah Moore is back. Let's say he is out another week. Let's say Corey Davis misses some time with this MCL sprain. Garrett Wilson, like, still, even if you take these guys out of the picture with Zach Wilson under center, I mean, he'd definitely be a wide receiver 3, but I can't guarantee top 30 as we're saying this right now.
Yeah, I mean, he becomes like DJ Moore.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote down. A big part of the utilization report tomorrow will be kind of this check-in at the team macro level. There's less player takes this week. There's some, like I've got, like 30 written down already, but like there's some major macro stuff with these teams. And with the Jets, we've seen enough now with Zach Wilson to know that this is basically you're dealing with Carolina. That's what you're dealing with here. Yeah. This is a very similar situation to that. So even if we get a condensed target tree to Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson's played really well, like he's led the team in target share, he's led the team in targets per route run. So he's doing his part. He's doing what he can do. We think that earning targets is obviously a huge part, right, of being a receiver. Like that's the first thing you have to do. And he's done that. The problem is, like, you can earn all the damn targets you want. If you can't throw for over 200 yards in a game, it's just really problematic. And that's kind of where this offense is, at this point. We had 121 yards passing today from Zach Wilson. So it's really hard, man. Like, you have 50% target share, and it's going to be hard to score fantasy points in a situation like that. It's just really tough.
And then the sad news here, Breece Hall is believed to have torn his ACL. That is coming from the Jets themselves. Had an electric 62-yard touchdown run. Oh, he wasn't touched. He ran away. The amount of angles he erased on that touchdown run, like, my goodness. I know we can always try to break down running backs and say that they're, just a result of their environment or the scheme or the volume, but Breece Hall, whatever you want to say it was, man, he coming in this week, it was him, McCaffrey, and Saquon, the only running backs that had every single game be a top 24 finish. And he wasn't even getting this great workload until a couple of weeks ago to begin with. So he was surpassing all the expectations, in a year where we've seen Damien Pierce and Kenneth Walker explode on the scene as well and look fantastic as rookies. Breece Hall was right there with them, if not even better every step of the way, particularly with some of the stuff he did as a receiver. Hate it. Get better soon, Breece. Get out there in 2023 and just let this be one down year. And as Dwayne, because we're fantasy people with no freaking hearts or souls, we now need to talk about life without Breece Hall. Michael Carter, next man up. He did go out there and play 75% of the snaps. Ty Johnson was active. Ty Johnson was not involved. And that's what made us really in on Michael Carter before they drafted Breece Hall, because we had seen them turn this backfield over to him with that 70% plus role towards the end of last season, even when everyone else had gotten healthy. So it's not a good offense. I think we've kind of drove that point home enough with Zach Wilson, but as good as Breece Hall is, man, Michael Carter's damn good too. All those efficiency metrics that everyone used to hype up Javonte Williams for good reason, Michael Carter was right there with him last year. Literally, I don't know what they were putting in those North Carolina Gatorade coolers. Those were your top 2 running backs in the NFL last season in terms of just forcing missed tackles per touch. So you can catch the ball. The Jets are willing to treat him as a 3-down running back. I'm not saying he's going to be quite as good as Breece Hall. I mean, again, not many running backs in the league, rookie status aside, have been as good as Breece Hall this year. Michael Carter, Dwayne, especially with some of these bye weeks, he's going to be someone in the top 20 more weeks than not. And honestly, if we do see the 75% persist, that's not too far away from RB1 level if this offense can get going a little bit.
Yeah, he moves immediately to mid-range RB2 for me. That's where I'll be putting him in the utilization report tomorrow based on what we've seen here. You mentioned all the faults, but Breece Hall was, dealing with all those faults too. Now, Michael Carter, yes, he's not as good as Breece Hall, but to your point, who really is in the NFL this year? Not very many, only a few. But Michael Carter was really good last year. I believe Michael Carter is a good player. It was funny, like how many people just like, yeah, Michael Carter sucks. And I'm like, God, like you people change your minds so freaking fast about people. Like, 2 months ago, Michael Carter was going to hold back Breece Hall, but now he sucks. It's so he's a good player. He's going to get plenty of opportunity, and he's insulated a bit, right? Because the passes that he's going to catch are going to come from a shorter range. He's going to get the guaranteed touches on the ground. If the Jets can manage to play defense like the way they have, and keep running the ball, he's going to be the primary beneficiary. We could see he's a guy that could easily, Ian, we could look up and be like, yeah, every week we're going to project him between 17 and 21 rushing attempts, 16 and 20, somewhere in there. If we think the game script, has any chance of being in hand, right? If not, he's probably going to be still around 15, even in a game where it gets out of hand, and then he's going to get some target. He's going to get some extra targets. So yeah, I like Michael Carter. The overall upside of the offense is not real good, like we talked about with the receivers for Zach Wilson, but a little bit more insulated at running back, because he doesn't, Zach Wilson doesn't have to throw the ball as far, and he can just hand it to you. So that helps you.
Speaking of bad offenses, the Denver Broncos with 9 points in this one through 7 weeks now, 30th in EPA per play, they're 31st in PFF team offense. The Jets are actually last in that one. 30th in team passing, 30th in team receiving, 28th in rushing. Shout out to the big uglies up front, though. Top 10 O-line in pass blocking and run blocking. So it's just been so depressing at every level of this team. And I know Russ was out this week with the hamstring. Nathaniel Hackett did say he's trending towards playing next week. But even when Russ was out there, the run game has been pitiful ever since Javonte got hurt. And these wide receivers, man, it's one of those things where they really are living on a big reputation, not getting too much going more weeks than not. Jerry Jeudy did come back today with 7 catches for 96 yards. Greg Dulcich did have a nice afternoon at the office, actually had 9 targets, 51 yards, didn't just get, a 40-yard broken play touchdown that had everyone freaking out about on a primetime game. But it's just, again, one of those things, Dwayne, where Melvin Gordon, he's the starter. Things are great. 52% snaps, 11 carries. Latavius Murray right there with 37% and 8 carries. And that's in a game where Mike Boone got hurt and, got the ankle. So we're almost at that point with Melvin where it's like turning into LaVisca from last year, where it's like, hey, Javonte, Mike Boone, Latavius Murray, they'll sign Devontae Freeman. We need him to get hurt. Le'Veon Bell stops his boxing career. He comes to Denver. He gets hurt. All those guys get hurt. Maybe something can work out for Melvin Gordon. But again, this is the dead last scoring offense in the NFL. That's not going to change after this week. They've scored more than 16 points, I believe, one time this entire season. Even getting Russ back, Dwayne, like Cortland Sutton at this point, I don't think he can be a top 24 receiver. It sucks, but man, this is so terrible. We're talking dead last. This was supposed to be one of the best offenses in the league. I could deal with average. This is not even close to average. Are they going to turn it around, man? Because I don't have much reason to think that they will.
Yeah, I don't have much reason either. I mean, the only thing we can lean into is that Russ has been a good quarterback for a long time. He didn't just, he's playing terrible this year, but at least there is a track record, and maybe he can snap out of it. I don't think we can completely rule that out, right? You just can't. You can't rule that out for a player that has had the career that Russ Wilson's had. Yeah. Now, you could make the argument that he's washed, that it's done, that it's over, and that's fine. That's an argument as well, but you can't completely dismiss it, and that's the only thing you can hope for, because for sure it's not going to get fixed by the damn coaching staff. This is a damn joke. Like, this is just like a comedy of freaking errors. Like, it's just terrible. You can't touch these running backs. It's going to be a 3-way committee if Mike Boone is healthy. Yeah. And they may find someone else to mix in. Yeah, Melvin was the lead, 51% of the snaps. But to your point, like, the touches were really close between the two. Melvin did get 100% of the 2-minute offense, most of the long down and distance work. But the short down and distance work, Latavius Murray came in and sniped that, and he got 100% of the work inside the 10-yard line, which was probably like half a carry, because are the Broncos ever inside the 10? Like, I can look at this. Let me pop this open. 2. They had 2, so whatever. He was out there for 100% of 2. plays inside the 10. So, yeah, man, it's a mess. Like, I do like Dulcich, to your point. I mean, a young tight end like this started demanding a 20% target share, 26% target per route run, 72% routes per drop back, route participation. Again, you got the anchor around your neck, the anvil around your neck of the Denver Broncos offense. But it's hard to find young tight ends breaking out this soon. And to see him doing what he's doing, you still have to take note. And he should be on rosters in most leagues.
Well, it's good to see him get that route right up there again. Second game back from that hamstring issue that kept him on the pump so long. Did begin with, usually don't see rookie tight ends doing this, but he really is more of a wide receiver being called tight end. More fantasy points count, same as Dwain has had to remind me over the years. I can't just be mad about that. We got to take advantage of it sometimes when fantasy guys are just ignore positional designations, but whatever. Only two changes in this one. KJ Hamler was open on the sideline for potential 30-40 yard play. Ripien, who was more times than not, as you can see with that sub 50%, almost sub 50% completion rate, 4.9 yards per attempt. Stat lines right there. And also Colton Sutton at the end had a great broadcast line. Got lost in the sauce there. Pretty handsy, I will say, on the play. But when you guys 4 down situations and both guys are going back and forth, I think the no call either way the ball was there to be one you would like to see Sutton maybe go out there and get it, but last
we're getting
not.
Some comments that the audio was jacked.
Uh-oh. Now are we good? Everyone, except for audio fix. Doesn't sound good.
I don't know if we need to pop out and start a new one to finish.
Let's see what's going on. Lovely.
Shoddy internet in Chicago. Yeah,
it could be.
Yeah, I was checking when I saw it first start. My internet is looking okay right now.
Dwain, how about you hold it down first? I don't even know if I can pop out. I'm sorry. When you hear me, just give me an update. Jesus.
Yeah, no. If you want to pop out from it, and I can go on this next game and start walking through it and come back in, or do you want to restart?
Go out. Fuck. All right, I'll be back. You stand.
All right, see if you can pop out. I'll keep going. All right, cool. All right, so yeah, let's talk about the Raiders. We got the Raiders and the Texans. The Raiders won this game 38-20 over the Texans. Vegas did cover. They were 7-point favorites in the game. The over hit at 45.5. So looking at the Raiders today, Josh Jacobs continued to smash, do everything that we thought he was going to do. If you drafted Josh Jacobs and you got him around 7 or 8, like you're probably winning most of your matchups. Out there for 74% of the rushing attempts this weekend, 100% of the work inside the 10, and he continues to get work in the passing game. We did see some of that go to Amir Abdullah. He saw 88% of the long down and distance work for this week. One thing I would say on the Raiders running backs, like if you're in a really deep league, Zamir White as a name I would definitely remember, just because we've actually seen that Josh McDaniels is willing to really give the workload to one back. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to do that with Zamir White, but we've at least seen it's in the range of outcomes where we thought that was something that would never happen before. We all thought, oh no, Josh Jacobs, he's in the Josh McDaniels offense. All the beat reporters, everyone said this was going to continue to be a committee. Zamir White is a very clear handcuff to Josh Jacobs. So something for you folks playing in deeper leagues, like he might be one of these guys we should be considering as the higher end range of outcomes as far as what we could see from a handcuff standpoint. The only other thing that I saw from a utilization standpoint for the Raiders, I just continue to, it's problematic for Hunter Renfrow. Only out there 72% of the routes. We have historically seen in the Josh McDaniels offense, the slot receiver is out there 85, 95% of the time. They keep them on the field. But Mac Hollins, like his arrival is really holding back Hunter Renfrow because he's staying on the field in the 2 wide receiver sets. The Raiders like to use a lot of heavy personnel. They'll go to 2 tight ends. They use a fullback. Those scenarios are keeping Hunter Renfrow off the field, and that's going to make it really hard for Renfrow to score touchdowns or just to catch balls, period. So I am downgrading Hunter Renfrow. I had held out hope that it was really just due to the injury, but now seeing him back, seeing the route participation in this game, that was definitely problematic for him. So I don't think we can think of him as anything more than a wide receiver 4 right now. And Mac Hollins isn't doing a lot. Like he's only seeing a 12% target share, but being out there, that's enough to keep Hunter Renfrow off the field. On the Texans side of the ball, I was hoping maybe we would get a bump with Damien Pierce in the passing game. Didn't see it. Coming out of the bye, it was still all going to Rex Burkhead. And then we had Dare Ogunbowale, also Ian's favorite.
Nailed it.
Ian was waiting. He was going to pounce. 82% of the long down and distance went to him. And then you had Rex Burkhead. I don't know. Did Rex Burkhead perhaps get hurt? I didn't see anything on this.
It was just last drive. It was just last drive of the game. All that Dare production came on the last drive. He's not actually a factor.
Okay, cool. So we didn't see the additional word for Pierce, but still 87% of the rushing attempts. He had an 84 PFF rushing grade again today, 20 rushing attempts today for Pierce, 92 yards. So he's still a guy you're fine. He still had 4 targets for 4 receptions, 25 yards. So they're getting the ball to Pierce on the early downs. He is clearly the number one weapon on their team. They are getting him more involved than Brandon Cooks. They're getting him more involved than anyone. And you even heard him today, at halftime, because I can't remember who the sideline reporter was, but they were laughing because the nugget she got from the team was, we've got to get Damien Pierce more involved. And
that's all Lovie Smith says. This team is terrible. The organization hasn't really made a good move in a half a decade at this point. And every single time they go Lovie Smith, he's like, well, let's look at getting Damien Pierce 20, 30 carries. And hey, go ahead. He is awesome. And I get all
let's get him out there on passing downs, Lovie. How about that? We would take that. You could actually get us excited with that.
That would be nice. And it is one of those things, man. Unfortunately, if Rex got hurt, I just think Dare would probably kind of leap into that role. But again, 24 combined carries and targets, even in a game they lost by 18. I mean, if that's our floor for Damien Pierce's usage, not going to be too bad out there. And this was kind of the more bear case for Damien Pierce, is that this is going to be a bad offense, not giving him too many scoring opportunities. And if they fall behind, which we kind of expect, it is going to be a potential game scripted off the field situation. But hey, still fantastic on the year, as has been Josh Jacobs.
But the difference has been, even when they're in these games where they're trailing, they're like the honey badger. They don't give a shit. They're still giving it to Damien Pierce. He still gets his carries. Even in these games where they're getting their freaking wheels blown off, he gets his touches. It's almost it's really like Derrick Henry, what we have seen over the last couple of years with Derrick Henry. Even in the games where we would see them, it would hurt him. It still wouldn't be as good for Henry in those games, but they were so dedicated that it was still, it would end up being okay for him. And that's what we're getting with Pierce.
PFF rushing grade 7th this year, Damien Pierce. Josh Jacobs is 2nd. They are also both top 10 in missed tackles forced and yards after contact per carry. Truly, if you wanted to say, Mount Rushmore of just running back season with the ball in their hands, I do think that Damien Pierce and Josh Jacobs at a minimum need to be in that conversation, if not on that Mount Rushmore to begin with. I would note that Nico Collins suffered a groin injury, so if some of the routes and stuff are off in that could explain why. And just one more thing, Dwayne, the Texans keep doing this dumbass screen spread formation where you only have the center and the 2 guards and they all go line up on the sideline. They did it, and then they false started on a 4th and 1 when guess what? All they were going to do is run it up the middle, because that's all they ever do when they start off in this weird screen formation that, again, it's just, God, you've already shown it on film so many times, Pep Hamilton. If you're going to do it, then do it, man. It's remember those muddle huddles, field goal things? I remember in high school, we always did this. We didn't run the fake one time all damn season. We just kept, preparing to potentially do it if the defense didn't match the numbers right. So, okay, enough on that one. Got the audio fixed. So life is good again, everyone. Great day.
We're good.
Great.
Yeah. Hey, Seahawks, Damien Pierce, real quick.
Last thing.
Are you selling in Dynasty? Because that's the thing, out there is hey, the draft capital's not, even though he's looked awesome. And, people there's good points, right? Look at a lot of these guys like Michael Carter, who also looked good last year. Never as good as what Damien Pierce is right now. But what happens? Then you spend a 2nd round pick, you get pushed to the wayside. So do you think now is the time to sell on Damien Pierce high? But because you can also miss on something like this. If this was always your motto, you would have missed on Arian Foster. There's some guys that have gone on to blow up, right? That weren't, early round picks. But there have been quite a few where if you right now, let's say you could sell Damien Pierce for a 1st round pick next year, I think you probably should, just because it's also a loaded class.
If I'm feeling good enough on my dynasty team that I'm actively trying to win this year, then I'd want him, because I think he's going to be.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it does depend on your team.
But in terms of that, generally, yeah, because we see these running backs time and time again. Man, Todd Gurley just retired. These guys' prime don't last. And if you can get in a loaded 2023 class, particularly for a super flex league, get one of those chances to get and more of an upside quarterback or wide receiver, that'd be great. Because remember, a big part of this for Damien Pierce, he's awesome. There's also a lot of awesome running backs in the NFL, and not many coaches are willing to give them this sort of usage. over under 1 season, Dwayne?
I mean, the Texans aren't good. What if they draft Bijan? Like, there's a lot of ways that this could go bad for Damien Pierce.
I think we're going to have a new coaching staff possibly as early as 2023. So that's going to immediately throw another wrench into things. I would say dynasty. Yeah, probably a good time to sell high on Damien Pierce. Great talent though. Would love to see him keep on keeping on. Seahawks took down the Chargers 37-23. You're 4-3 first place Seattle Seahawks. Great day to beat. Great there. Just keeps on keeping on, man. Pick a stat, any stat for this offense, and it's going to tell you they're a top 10 group. EPA per play, they're 5th. PFF team offense, they're 8th. Scoring, they're top 10. It's just been great all year, man. Geno Smith keeps on keeping on. There were 2 touchdowns today. Wasn't able to get the Tyler Lockett. We have Marquise Goodwin, the freaking arguably, I think he did actually win the NFL's fastest man competition. Him and Dante Jackson, the Panthers corner, were in the final. So Marquise had a couple nice scores, and then he hit a sick backflip. I love the growing trend where the coaches, like, instead of putting, like, I don't know, a safety or like someone responsible as the top guy in the victory formation, we got Marquise Goodwin doing backflips. Justin Jefferson does like a back handspring type of thing. Like, irresponsible, sure. Like, at some point we might see like a fumble on the kneel down and like Marquise Goodwin's doing a backflip as the defense is, miracle in the Meadowlands and get all the way back to the house or something like that. So just something that, I do like to keep an eye on throughout the course of a season. But really, in this one, we had the DK Metcalf ankle injury, and reportedly the x-rays are negative. We'll see what the MRI says. So hopefully Metcalf obviously gets right sooner rather than later. Wasn't the biggest game for Tyler Lockett, but the fact he still gave us 7 catches, 45 yards after not practicing all week. I mean, that dude is a legit warrior out there. Dwayne, do you see the tweet talking about Tyler Lockett's like quest, like to not get tackled once all season?
No, I didn't. I'm gonna have to go check this out.
They clip like 90 seconds of Tyler Lockett making these big plays, running after the catch, but like anytime there's a defender nearby, he just hits the ground down, like immediately. And
hey, Marvin Harrison used to do that too, and he had a long career.
Staying healthy, he's got to do what you got to do. It is just funny the devotion the man's got to doing it. And it's working out for him. So no shame here. But hey, the big storyline, as it should be, Kenneth Walker, 168 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns, dominant 73% share of the snaps. However, Dwayne, 0 targets. DJ Dallas still had to go do his thing. So I will say, Kenneth Walker's been awesome. He is in this role because Rashad Penny and Travis Homer got injured. Are you at all worried about Homer coming back? Because we know that was not going to be Penny anytime soon. Are you at all worried that Kenneth Walker could lose this? I'm not, because I don't think that they're going to be in a situation where Homer would actually take any of the rush attempts. But I just thought it was worth asking, because it is wild that Kenneth Walker would be the RB3 on this team feasibly if those guys weren't hurt. Luckily, we don't have to worry about that world right now. But just based on Kenneth Walker, rest of the season, where would you want him? Because it's looked pretty damn good so far.
I think he's an RB1 now. I mean, he took 100% of the 2-minute offense this weekend. So that in the weeks before, we had seen him take part of the long down and distance stuff. So now he's shown an ability to play on both types of passing downs. One is more you're going to be blocking in a blitz scenario. The other one is, you're going to be going out in a route to get a check down. To your point, he didn't have a target today. But when you're out there on the field in the 2-minute offense, that tells you that the coaches think that you're fine, that you can be out there on receiving plays. So, and the other thing with Walker is like his targets per route run have been really solid this year, like 23%, going to go down some this weekend. So he's probably more like around the 19-20% mark. I don't have his season long number in front of me now. But man, just everything there is to love, like, and all the things we talked about in the preseason, just how much we loved watching this guy, like just how smooth of an operator he is, how many, missed tackle. Dude, this guy, I remember John Madden when he was talking about Clinton Portis one year, in the preseason, he's like, this guy's got moves on top of moves. Like, this is Kenneth Walker. It's like a move, another move, another move. And like, sometimes you're just like, dude, like jam that thing like in Drive, bro. Like, stop dancing too much. But he's freaking awesome, Ian. Like, he's an amazing running back. He makes NFL players who are really good at what they do, he can make them look silly. And there's not really that many people that can do that in the league, especially at the running back position. Most guys, they get what's there. They try to, be physical, those kind of things. Kenneth Walker's truly one of these guys that's electric when you see him with the ball in his hand. So if you have Kenneth Walker on your team, you should be super excited. Man, I am not worried about Travis Homer. Like, look, something could happen, but like, what's the point? If you have Kenneth Walker, like, you're not getting rid of him. You should be, hopefully you went and got him. Like we've talked about him multiple times, being a guy that you may think you're going to be buying high. You're not. Like, Now you're seeing what buy high looks like. 28.8 PPR points today, 23 carries for 168 yards and 2 freaking touchdowns. This guy is nuts.
74-yard touchdown run per next gen stats, top speed of 22.09 miles per hour, the fastest by any ball carrier this season. Well, he's 220. Come on, man. You should not be that big moving that fast. Great day to be a
I was playing Josh Jacobs today in one of my leagues, and thank God I had Kenneth Walker to offset some of it.
Or maybe you had Austin Ekeler, who is just proving to be more and more of an absolute cheat code in full PPR fantasy. Only had 9 carries for 31 yards and a touchdown on the ground, but that's fine when you have 12 catches for 96 yards and a receiving score. Just a filthy goal line route, by the way, for him to get as open as he did in the first place. Nice little whip route. I think they thought he was going to be running a pivot down there. So last year, he had 345.8 PPR points on the season. His 16 game pace for this year is 397, because as much as he was being used a lot as a receiver, Dwain, he really more so got a big benefit from the 8 receiving touchdowns. I mean, he still caught 70 passes, but he is on pace to catch 129 passes this year. And he played 16 games last year, so fine, take 8 off that and go down to 121. But this is McCaffrey without the 300 carries, basically. Like, this is the closest thing that we've really seen to the biggest cheat code PPR running back of the last few years. So Ekeler, if you want to put Saquon as the RB1, that's fine, but Ekeler is not going to be too far behind. It's just incredible.
Dude, Ekeler and Josh Jacobs are both way up there. Like, we have a really even after it sucks losing Breece Hall today. There's a really strong group, though, still of backs that, are all going to be fighting for these top 6 spots every week. Like, and Eckler's in that group. Josh Jacobs is in the group. Kenneth Walker's now in that group. It's there's a lot of really good players right now at the running back position, but Ekeler, man, the freaking targets are insane. 12 targets, 12 receptions, 96 yards. It's just, he had a 26% target share today. Like, he's just doing that every week now.
Keenan Allen on a pitch count coming off that hamstring injury, didn't play in the second half. That's not good. Mike Williams suffered an ankle injury and got carted off, was diagnosed with a sprained ankle. We'll see if it's high, low.
Did he come back, or was he out the rest of the game?
No, it was pretty late in the game, though.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Josh Palmer didn't play anyway because he had concussion. So if those guys are out, it's going to be DeAndre Carter, Michael Bandy, and hopefully Will Fuller.
Michael Bandy. You just wanted to say Michael Bandy. You've been waiting the whole show just to say Michael Bandy.
Hey, man, he's out there, okay? And he might have been – there might have been another person with that name that was a serial killer in the past, but that doesn't impact the 2022 Chargers.
True?
Yes, I told you when I searched his name, the serial killer.
That's right.
Before Michael Bandy. It was on freaking wheels. So, hey, it is what it is there. So
his parents named him after a serial killer.
That's the thoughts I've been collecting, Dwain. So boom performance from Mike Williams. We just got to see if these guys get healthy or not. So how did Gerald Everett's usage look? Because Donald Parham was out. Even with
not
Donald
good, buddy.
Out.
54% route participation. Now, 28% targets per route run, 19% target share. So he was doing his part to earn, the looks, 1.97 yards per route run today. But yeah, that 54% route participation also had me wondering, was there something wrong with Gerald Everett? You had Trey McKitty. Meow. He was on the field for 25% of the routes. So we're getting late. We're getting late here. Richard Rodgers, 10%. So yeah, I don't see I don't see anybody blocking him there. But somehow he ended up only with 54%.
Chiefs took down the 49ers 44-23, and oh my goodness, these wide receivers were going off. So cool little stat here, Dwayne. I got scheduled for like 6:30 a.m. on Twitter, so people think I just never sleep. I like to keep an air of mystery going. But so Chiefs, all the wide receivers, their PPR points by week. In weeks 1 through 6, they never got higher than 39. They were never lower than 24. 75.2 PPR points from this entire wide receiver room today. Juju Smith-Schuster. A lot of us, including me, wrote him off after a pretty slow start to the season. Back-to-back games now over 100 yards and a touchdown. MVS finally caught some downfield balls, 111 yards. He's now put together a couple decent weeks here over the last month. Travis Kelce continuing to do Travis Kelce things. He actually had a 14-yard touchdown taken off the board because of an illegal hands to the face penalty. And oh, hey, Mecole Hardman, not 1, not 2, 3 touchdowns out there. And that's the thing with Mecole. Hill. No, he's not Tyreek Hill, but guess what? He's really freaking fast. And if you ask them to race each other, it's going to be closer than you think. So just credit to them for getting him the ball in space, not asking him to be something that he's not. So it's a scary version of the Chiefs offense if all these guys can keep going, Dwain. Now, unfortunately, look, Juju had 8 targets, Kelsey 8, MVS 4. I don't think it's a situation where we're seeing these guys separate enough to just really shoot them to the top of the ranks. It wasn't like a huge workload change. We just saw them being a part of a Patrick Mahomes-led offense. Mahomes does his thing, and all of a sudden, the complementary pieces get going. So just good news for all those guys. But obviously, the big topic is new starting running back Isaiah Pacheco taking it over for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, where they're being called the starter, and they actually still play behind Jerick McKinnon, who led the way with the 40% snap rate. But Pacheco did have a team-high 8 carries. This was a game where, look, Mahomes he only needed 34 pass attempts to throw for 423 yards. So they were able to get up and sustain the lead by passing the ball. I do still think that Pacheco, just moving forward, Dwayne, low-end RB2. That's what Clyde Edwards-Helaire was. That's how I'm expecting Isaiah Pacheco to be. I would say he has the upside for more if they are making this switch. Maybe they do eventually just decide to fully sit Clyde Edwards-Helaire down. He did score a touchdown after Pacheco was tired from having a real nice kick return. But overall thoughts on the Chiefs backfield now that we do have a 1 dot sample size, unfortunately, does still seem pretty muddled.
Yeah, I would say high-end RB3. Which is really what Clyde Edwards-Helaire's utilization was. He just was, living on insane touchdown efficiency until he wasn't, right? He freaking scored another one today. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is just the run of luck here is insane. Only had 5 carries for 29 yards today, and he gets a touchdown. But Pacheco, I think if you think of him as a high-end RB3, with upside, and to your point, if he can carve out more work, he did lead the way. It's almost like their roles flipped. Pacheco really before was only getting work in games where they were leading, and he was kind of like the 4-minute back at the end of the game, but Edwards-Helaire would still get some of that. You saw that happen today. Really, Pacheco was out there, and the first and third drive was more Pacheco than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The second drive was Jerick McKinnon. In the past, we'd really seen it be the opposite. So he did get the start. He did get more of the work. I would say Pacheco does get the upgrade. Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets a downgrade. You don't want to go release Clyde Edwards-Helaire, folks, because this could easily go back to the other way. Pacheco's going to have to show that he deserves to have the role. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's problem, right, is he just hasn't been explosive. Like if you look at him per next gen stats, he has the 4th least percentage of carries that go for over expected yards rushing. Like he just doesn't have it when it comes to creating those big plays. And if you want to have, an offense like the Chiefs and what they like to do, like go check out Jay Moyer. He wrote a great thread, like postmortem, and Jay loves Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He wrote a great thread on what he sees going on. Yeah. With Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a guy that's been a true CEH, homer, right. Or truther. So I thought Jay had a really good thread on it today. But most likely this is going to, we'll see what happens. It's still a committee for now. We really would need Pacheco to either take over what Clyde Edwards-Helaire has now and just have all of that, have all the early down work, or we need Pacheco to start carving out more of what we're getting from McKinnon to really get excited about him. But it is momentum, right? He's taken a step in the right direction. You play on the Chiefs offense. He needs to be rostered. I will say that for sure. I know it didn't work out. I put out a tweet this morning like, hey, drop everything. And then somebody was like, I hope they don't take that literally, like as in drop anything on your fantasy roster. No, I meant like drop your groceries, folks. Look at your phone. Come on, stop acting like a human and look at your phone. Go pick up Isaiah Pacheco. And, it's still the right move. He needs to be rostered, but we'll see what happens from here. He definitely gets the upgrade. He's above Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, you can't have Clyde Edwards-Helaire in your lineup at all right now.
No. Only other note I had for the Chiefs was Juju actually almost had a second touchdown, 5-yard score.
Juju's looking good last couple games.
He is. And again,
Hardman had a big game too.
He's been hurt. He's been hurt the last 3 years, and that's kind of made it tough to really get through it. He did seem to show more juice.
And he's banged up he still looks like a fullback when he catches the ball. But, Mecole had a nice game too, but we didn't see necessarily a spike in utilization. This is kind of a hard one. Like none of these guys were even at 70% route participation today. They rotated more guys, but also you had at the end of the game, they didn't have the starters in. So I got to go back and dig into this one a little bit more. So they were all kind of close, but I didn't see anything underlying in Mecole Hardman's, utilization, making me think that his role had expanded or really changed. I could be wrong about that. I've got to go dig more into it, but he had 3 rushing attempts for 31 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Then he also had 4 receptions for 32 yards and a receiving touchdown.
He clearly had a chip on his shoulder because he wasn't invited to the Call of Duty game that Juju said he, Mahomes, Kelsey, and MVS. 3 straight wins on Friday. Help get the chemistry going, Dwayne. I just love, too, how just when you're winning the Call of Duty games, they're like, a great sign of team chemistry and stuff. And when you're losing, it's like, how can Kyler Murray be a professional quarterback and be a grown man and play Call of Duty all the damn time? So either way, great job by Juju. Getting back on track and, proving some people like myself very wrong with just thinking that he was going to not be able to have these sort of boom performances. Just goes to show what Patrick Mahomes is capable of doing on San Francisco side of things. So Christian McCaffrey debut certainly was on that pitch count. Jeff Wilson led the way, we'll say, with 31% snaps, 7 carries, 1 target, CMC 29%. And we even saw Tyrion Davis-Price staying involved with an 18% snap rate. Once again, though, we did get a drive with Brock Purdy in there at the end. So I think TDP's usage is being a little bit overstated with some of that pure backup time. Jeff Wilson, to his credit, was good out there, but it's Christian freaking McCaffrey. I would expect him to have his usual 80% snap roll as early as next week. And he's once again going to be jammed in those starting lineups. I just wonder, Dwayne, if he is going to have that same sort of target share. This year, the 49ers throwing to running backs are 30th. They were 32nd last year. Now, they were 14th in 2020, and they were 9th in 2017 when Kyle Shanahan decided to throw the ball to Carlos Hyde a bunch of times for some reason. What a time to be alive. So I do think Shanny, being the great play caller that he is going to find a way to get Christian McCaffrey plenty involved in the thing he does best. But my God, man, CMC, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, a lot of mouths to feed out there. And it's a good problem to have if you're Jimmy Garoppolo and if you're Kyle Shanahan. Good game by Jimmy again this week. Took a lot of sacks, but 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. Had a good game last week too. Unfortunately, his receivers weren't doing him as many favors. But out of McCaffrey being there, Dwayne, again, I don't expect his standing as a top 10 running back to go anywhere. Is this just bad news for Debo and someone that we should get more comfortable at as an upside wide receiver too? I mean, the dude hasn't had more than like 12 rushing yards since week 2. He hasn't scored a touchdown on the ground since week 1. And even receiving, man, it's not like that we see underlying measures that he's all of a sudden being involved more than Kittle, more than Ayuk. In fact, it's the opposite. So Debo Samuel, yeah, he's got the talent. We still see that. Last week, he broke freaking 9 tackles as a receiver out there. The guy's still incredible, but Christian McCaffrey's pretty incredible too. A healthy George Kittle is pretty incredible. Brandon Ayuk doing the damn thing as well. Kind of rest of season expectations for Debo now that McCaffrey's there.
Yeah, I think what we really need from the 49ers, they're going to have to throw the ball more. That's what we need. And at least over the last 2 games where the script has dictated it, we've seen that. They drop back to pass on 70% of their plays. Which what we have seen from the 49ers here, over the last couple of years, even in a game like this where they would trail, they would not get that pass heavy. They would just basically refuse. That's the league average for what it's worth. It's not like they went nuts today. The league average over the last 3 years, if you're trailing by 4 or more points, is to drop back and pass 70%. That's where they were at today. But historically, they've been under that. So it's a step in the right direction. We need them to do that in neutral scripts. We need them to do that, in positive game scripts as well, at least be at the league average to help unlock, enough volume, for all of these guys. But Debo, I disagree a little. I think just it's the overall offensive volume. He's definitely been the target hog of all these guys. His target shares this season before today, 27%, 24%, 29%, 29%, 30%, 25%. You get spikes from Ayuk, you get spikes from Kittle, but overall Debo has been, the number one guy on the offense when there's 2 other really good guys demanding targets. Now today it did come down a little bit. We only saw a 14% target share today. You had Ayuk lead the team with a 26%. You had George Kittle at 19%. To your thing on Christian McCaffrey, I think you're going to lose some receptions here. It's just you're not going to get the same volume, but I think you're going to pick up touchdowns. You're playing in a better offense. You're playing in a better scheme. Christian McCaffrey might have only scored 5 or 6 touchdowns this year total in the Panthers offense. I think you're going to have an upside for him to come on and score double-digit touchdowns alone just in the games with the 49ers, and he could go nuts. That's where you're going to need to pick up your points for CMC. I still feel pretty good about it, but we are going to need the 49ers to if they go back to their old offense of we're just going to ground and pound, It's going to be bad. Because to your point, like we already struggled with 3 guys because these are 4 elite weapons. These are not 3 average or 1 good, 1 okay. These are 4 really, really high end weapons. So they're going to have to throw the ball more, and it's in the range of outcomes that they could decide to do that. So we'll have to wait and see. But if they go back to this now, we're going to run the ball 50% of the time. CMC is going to be fine because he's going to get plenty of the carries. I would expect him to get 70, 80% of the work. But yeah, there's going to be players left out every week of this offense.
Final game here. The Steelers lost the Miami Dolphins 16-10 in a pretty entertaining Sunday night game. The Dolphins went right down the field on their first drive and looked like they were about ready to score 90 points. And then Tua had not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 dropped interceptions throughout the afternoon. That's one of those things, Dwayne. PFF, we get a lot of hate here and there, and it is what it is. You're always going to have people saying this, saying that, but it is a hole in basic football statistics. When you have stuff like that, it can be helpful to have someone where, yeah, we do need to add a little bit of subjectivity to things. But anyone that watched that game, and if you look at Tua's passing line versus what actually happened, I do think that, sometimes you can find a happier medium with that. So win is a win, but we did see just the limitations with Tua, and it has looked awesome for certain points this year, but the arm strength doesn't do him any favors sometimes downfield. And for someone that, again, is lauded as I think, as Tyreek said, the most accurate quarterback he's ever caught a pass from, you do see an awful lot of misfires, more weeks than not when he is out there. So still an offense that, despite all that, man, was still able to have 261 passing yards. Tyreek got 7 catches, 72 yards. That's like his floor game at this point. Jalen Waddle still had 88 yards. So I'm not ringing the panic alarms. We just saw this Steelers defense make Tom Brady and a bunch of healthy guys look very mortal, and that was before Fitzpatrick and some of these other players were able to come back out there and play. So maybe just a sign that, like, that explosion we saw against the Ravens and some of the early season success, I still think Tua is firmly in that low end kind of QB1 conversation, but I wouldn't put him like up with Burrow in terms of just like, I don't think there's a tier gap between Tua and the rest of these kind of pocket passers. Is that fair?
Yeah. He's in the QB2 conversation. He's not a QB1, but what the ceiling can look like, just really as, like what we talked about with Jared Goff. He's the same thing. He's a point guard, right? He's not going to shoot a lot. Like, he's just going to distribute. And the beauty of it, though, is when you have Waddle, when you have Tyreek Hill, these guys, can do a lot of the work for you. They can do the heavy lifting. Tyreek Hill, listen to these targets. These are his targets on the season. He had 13. He had 13 tonight. So he's had 12, 13, 4, 14, 7, 15, and then the 13 tonight. Tyreek Hill is like going to have like 200 targets on the season. So I'm not worried about any of these pieces. I think the main takeaway is your point on Tua. Don't get overly down on him. Don't get overly up on him. Like, he'll have some blow up games. I have no doubt he's still going to have 350-yard passing performances where he's going to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns just because the receivers go bananas. But you can't expect him to carry the team.
Mostert 44 snaps, just 18 for Chase Edmonds, and Mostert doing some pretty good things in the passing game. I don't want to call it a drop. He got laid out by Minkah Fitzpatrick.
It was a perfect hit. Legal.
Yeah. Just a great hit. If that was someone else that wasn't, one of the best safeties in the league, Mostert could have maybe caught it and fallen forward into the end zone. That's okay. He did catch a touchdown pass earlier on in the game, right after Mike Gesicki had one go off his face mask. To be fair, defender was getting awful handsy in there. And Gesicki is the final point, Dwayne, because we did see him run a route on 27 of, it looks like 35 or so potential dropbacks there for Tua. So that's been the concern with Gesicki. It's never been about his talent. It's just getting out there on the field. They've had a lot of these kind of, backup tight ends be a little bit banged up. So maybe that has something to do with it.
I believe Durham. Yeah, I do believe Durham Smythe was out again. So these
he played.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Was Hunter Long out, or was one of the other guys out?
Hunter Long was in there, but no, they're constantly on the injury report. So it's like what we talked about with a couple of these guys. Like, I don't think this is a sign to fire up Gesicki as a top 10 player, but hey, he had 2 touchdowns last week. We all love watching the guy gritty. Maybe Mike McDaniel's finally getting a soft spot for the guy. And if he's going to be out there in this offense running a route, hey man, like, I don't need your magic number. We don't need 75, 80% of these routes necessarily. If we can get 65, 70 in this offense, that's fine for a player as talented as Gesicki.
Yeah. No, I think it would be fine. Especially if they get in these games where they're continuing to be close. We'll have to see what happens when these other tight ends are healthy, but he's definitely looking better than what we thought we would have been saying about him by like week 6, 7, or 8, right? Yeah. Like this is a guy that we would have just been saying belongs on the wire. I think at this point, he should be rostered probably, and I don't want to say most leagues because there's a lot of streaming tight ends available right now. There's only a few really good ones, but he's definitely in the range of a guy that you should be considering. And you have the upside of the offense, right? We know the offense can be explosive. The problem is, between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, 50 to 60% of the targets are immediately gone. so you're going to, you just have to accept that. It's kind of one of those, it is what it is kind of things. Just like if you're going to play for the Rams and you got to play behind Cooper Kupp, you just know 30, 35% is already gone, Right. So, I mean, that's just the way that the offense is going to work. That's going to continue to be the case here. But yeah, I think Gesicki, he's fine, as one of these guys you're looking at as a streaming tight end option. And maybe we start to warm to him a little bit more. Has definitely been out there a lot more over the last 2 games.
Kenny Pickett, not exactly a good performance on the other side of things against the Dolphins defense that we've seen be had on numerous points by different offenses throughout the year. 44 freaking pass attempts, only had 257 yards, did have 3 interceptions to his name out there. So yeah, it was, 26 total points. You guys can kind of put it together. Not the best offensive explosion. George Pickens did add to his ever-growing highlight reel with an awesome touchdown catch. Deontay Johnson still not quite giving us as much as we want. I would say that, could have had a nice little 30-yard gain early, but Kenny Pickett overthrew it. Chris Collins was immediately brought up. I mean, more deep shots from this Pittsburgh Steelers offense than any other offense. No touchdowns on them just yet. So Najee Harris continuing to be the lead back, albeit pretty ineffectively. He did have a nice, I think 12-yard catch and run where he broke some tackles, but it's just one of those things where I do think there's an argument sometimes that these missed tackles for statistics, when they come at the expense of explosive plays, man, I do think it could sometimes overrate guys. And we've seen that a little bit with Najee. So look, we've already adjusted Najee down to this like low end RB2. Doesn't need to be forced in the fantasy lineups by any stretch of the imagination. Jaylen Warren needs to be rostered far more leagues than not, because only one injury away to Najee from having the same sort of just RB2 volume-based role. So Pat Freiermuth, 8 catches, 75 yards. He got going at the end. It's just one of these things when I like the players here, but we're still looking at a bottom 3 overall offense basically on the season with most of the points and EPA per play statistics. And because of that, it sucks because I think Pickens, I think Deontay, Freiermuth, Najee to an extent, all these guys are good, but then again, I don't feel like any of them need to be started.
Yeah, but you're just hoping Pickett gets it going, because with him out there, you got 9 targets to Freiermuth, you got 10 to Deontay Johnson, you got 8 to Chase Claypool. In games where he's clicking, all 3 of those guys could come through in an environment like that, So I think there's some positives going on. We just need to see Pickett take the next step forward. The offense definitely looks better as far as the volume goes in the games without Mitch Trubisky playing quarterback. So I look at that as a positive, and you still had 6 targets to George Pickens. I mean, and Pickens, he was perfect tonight, 6 targets, 6 receptions, 61 yards and a touchdown. So I think if Pickett can take a step forward, like 2 out of the 4 could be coming through. Now we still got to pick. Like I won't be able to tell you which 2 are going to come through every week. You're just gonna have to kind of start them. But I think there's some positive things right now with the Steelers offense overall, because I don't think they're just going to all of a sudden become a great quality offense, but at least if the volume can be there, kind of back to our conversation around the Colts, right? When we first started, like, yeah, the offense isn't good, but at least now there's enough volume that maybe 2 or 3 pass catchers can come through. I think we could see the same thing here with the Steelers. In fact, like I wouldn't really rate Matt Ryan that much above, Pickett. Like I think they're similar. I think they're similar guys.
Driving rainstorm, the baby hands narrative really was on display tonight. He was out there trying to deal with it.
I know. I saw that in the comment. People were already talking about the gloves. Yeah,
poor dude. He just can't ever go to Burger King, but it is what it is for Kenny out there. And with that, everyone's going to wrap up another game by game review edition. My favorite pod to do each and every week with my guy here, Dwain McFarland. Obviously, doing tons of great stuff throughout the rest of the week, though, over at MB Fantasy Life. Let people know what you got going over there, Dwain.
Yeah, you guys can go over and check it out at fantasylife.com. Everything is free. So obviously the utilization report's the first thing I'm working on, and I'm doing that for PFF. You get the deep dive over at PFF. You can get the high-level takeaways over at Fantasy Life, but then you get my rankings, you get my tiers, and then I do the newsletter a couple times a week. You guys go sign up for the newsletter. It's free. It's 5 minutes. You get it every morning. You can check it out. You can get it actually from my Twitter. If you go to my Twitter bio, So at Dwain McFarland, DWAINMCFARLAND, there's a spot where you can click on it to sign up for the newsletter. And again, just 5 minutes, early morning reading. Like you just kind of get all the news for the day in one easy spot.
That's great, Dwayne. But like rankings, tiers, like I had to buy an engagement ring this year. I got responsibilities. Like, well, how much are you gonna charge me for all that?
Oh man, I won't charge you anything, Ian.
But that's also all free.
Yeah, that's all free too.
Also all free. That was my point that I'm trying to help.
I know, I'm messing with you.
Great day to be great. PFF.com for all my stuff. You guys already know what it is. You hear me barking on this enough. I want to thank all of you for listening to us as always, and our growing, YouTube comments. You guys crack me up, and there no porn boss for the entire episode today. That's always great.
Yeah, that was great.
Always great when I'm mid-sentence trying to, block those things out there. Hey, maybe one day we'll get a producer in here. Who the hell knows? But good community, and it's just it's refreshing to get all the feedback back on this and see people, be positive, be rational, and I understand the frustrations that come every single week in fantasy. Obviously, Dwayne does as well. And again, just kudos to all you guys for being upstanding members of the community and showing that we can, talk about this game, have some lows, have some highs, and still, smile through it and just go on and try to be better fantasy players at the end of the day. That's always the goal, right? So for Dwayne, I'm Ian. Thanks so much for tuning in the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Until next time, take care, everybody.